Chapter 241, Emma in the Room. I curled up on the sofa by the window, still shaking from my earlier conversation with Scarlett. My throat felt raw from crying, and my eyes burned. I just wanted to go home, to feel safe again. The door suddenly swung open without warning. I froze, my eyes meeting Eric Blackwood's intense amber gaze. The expression on his face was utterly dark, shadows lurking in his eyes that made my blood run cold. My hand trembled violently and my phone slipped from my fingers, landing on the floor with a soft thud. Wait, hadn't I locked that door? I distinctly remembered turning the lock. Had it not caught properly? Or did locks mean nothing to an alpha like him? Fresh tears welled up and spilled down my cheeks as he stepped into the room. I hugged my knees tightly against my chest, trying to make myself as small as possible. I pressed back against the cushions, wishing I could disappear into them completely. Eric's eyes narrowed as he observed my terrified state. He walked toward me with measured steps, each one making my heart pound harder. He bent down, picked up my fallen phone, and extended it toward me. I didn't dare reach for it. All I could see was his hand, the same hand that had moved with lethal precision at the neutral territory airfield. The memory of how efficiently he had dispatched those rogue wolves flashed through my mind, making me tremble uncontrollably. "Scared like this?" he murmured, his voice low and dangerous. I pressed my lips together tightly, more tears filling my eyes as I stared at him without speaking. What could I possibly say that wouldn't make things worse? With a casual flick of his wrist, Eric tossed my phone onto the nearby coffee table. Then, to my absolute horror, he sat down beside me on the sofa. I recoiled instinctively, trying to create distance between us, but I was already pressed against the back of the lounge with nowhere else to go. His hand shot out, grabbing me with effortless strength and pulling me closer to him. "What are you hiding from? The sudden movement and his overwhelming proximity made me scream. "Ah!" Eric's expression, already dark, grew thunderous. "Scream again and see if I don't strip you and throw you out," he threatened, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper as his alpha power filled the room like a physical presence. I fell silent instantly, all struggling ceasing as if my body had disconnected from my brain. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at him. We were so close now that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, his powerful presence completely enveloping me. In this moment, I realized just how different our worlds were. The wolves I'd known before, even with their pack schemes and politics, weren't cold-blooded enforcers like Eric seemed to be. The proximity between us, even in silence, felt suffocating with danger. Meeting my tear-filled gaze, Eric commanded coldly, "Don't cry. Let me go," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. All I wanted was distance from him, to be back home where things made sense. Eric's eyes narrowed slightly, the amber darkening to something almost molten. The danger in his expression escalated, making me backpedal quickly. "Don't let go! Don't let go!" I babbled, panic overtaking me. "If you want to hold me, just hold me. I'll let you. Here, hold me." A sob escaped me as I clutched the collar of the oversized hoodie I wore, terrified he might actually follow through on his threat to strip me and throw me out. I understood now with perfect clarity. This dangerous alpha wasn't truly controlled by Scarlett's mate, Roman Thorne. Away from Roman's direct influence, he operated independently, answering to no one but himself. Even if Roman had asked Eric to ensure my safety, was this what safety looked like? I felt like I might die from fright at any moment. Seeing my bowed head, probably resembling a frightened pup, Eric chuckled softly. "How can Scarlett Winters have a friend like you?" His comment stung, though I understood it. Scarlett had always been bold and fearless, qualities that had drawn me to her friendship. She'd been raised by the Thorne Pack, by Roman himself, and it showed in her confidence. Next to her, I must seem pitiful indeed. Eric suddenly released me and stood up. "Go take a shower and change your clothes," he ordered. The words sent a fresh shiver down my spine. "Why change clothes again?" I asked hesitantly. The hoodie I wore was admittedly messy from my fear and tears, but his instructions sounded ominous, especially after everything that had happened. My wariness toward him intensified with each passing moment. Eric shot me a cold glance. "We're going to another territory soon. We need to be quick." My heart clenched painfully in my chest. "Going out again?" The mere thought of leaving the relative safety of the villa made my stomach churn with anxiety. Eric confirmed with a simple and turned to leave. As he reached the door, desperation surged through me. "Can I not go?" I cried out. "Oh, moon goddess, save me." I truly couldn't bear the thought of accompanying him anywhere, especially after what I'd witnessed earlier. The violence, the danger that seemed to follow him like a shadow, it was all too much. Eric glanced back at me, his expression unreadable. He said nothing, simply walking out and closing the door softly behind him. I sat there, utterly helpless, the word help echoing in my mind with no one to hear it. Scarlett's POV. Alone again in the room, I trembled as I picked up my phone from the coffee table. The call with Scarlett had ended during my encounter with Eric. I dialed her number again with shaking fingers, relief washing over me when she answered quickly. "Scarlett," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "Scarlett, if you don't come back to the European territories, I suspect I won't live to see you." I burst out, unable to contain my fear any longer. The earlier incident involving Eric's confrontation with the rogue wolves had nearly broken me, and now he was insisting on another excursion. His words, "need to be quick," suggested something serious and potentially even more terrifying waiting for us. 10 hearts wouldn't be enough to withstand the scares that seemed to surround Eric Blackwood. There was a pause on the other end of the line, then Scarlett chuckled lightly. "Nonsense, Eric will protect you." "Is she serious?" I thought incredulously. How could she remain so calm? "I've already sent Thornpack operatives to find your mother and Jason Reed," Scarlett continued, her voice reassuring. "When are you coming back?" I pleaded urgently. Finding my mother and Jason was important, of course, but my immediate issue was being trapped with the terrifying Alpha. "Tomorrow, if there are no accidents," Scarlett replied casually. "Could there be an accident?" I asked, hope dwindling in my chest. "Hard to say," Scarlett admitted. "You remember what happened when we were supposed to fly directly from the neutral territory airfield? The unexpected firefight and detour. How could I forget?" "There can be accidents just going home?" My voice fell, filled with despair. I had no idea what dangers lurked outside, only that nothing felt safe anymore. Waiting for Scarlett seemed my only hope of escape from Eric's intimidating presence. "Hey, I know you're emotionally overwhelmed right now," Scarlett said gently, "but Emma, you need to accept a reality." "What reality?" I asked warily, not wanting to accept anything that might make this situation feel even more permanent. "Your mother might have provoked someone powerful she shouldn't have," Scarlett stated bluntly. Her words, though harsh, struck a chord deep within me. It made sense of the chaos I'd been thrust into, why my mother had hurriedly sent me abroad without proper preparation, why I'd been attacked at the airport, why nowhere felt safe. "Although you're scared of Eric, even scared of the danger around him, you have to accept that wherever you go now might be dangerous," Scarlett continued. My heart clenched painfully as the truth of her words sank in. This wasn't just about Eric. This was about my mother having offended someone with enough power to make the entire European territory unsafe for me. The realization shattered what little composure I had left. "Scarlett, woo!" I sobbed helplessly. "Come back quickly. Woo woo." Scarlett comforted me patiently, assuring me about the search for my mother. She explained that Roman's connections were extensive, and if anyone could find my mother and Jason, it would be the Thornpack operatives. Gradually, my emotions stabilized as I began to accept the drastic change in my world. Nothing would be the same, but at least I wasn't completely alone. After hanging up, I bit my lip, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Just then, there was a knock at the door before Leo poked his head in. "Potential Luna? Alpha says to come down quickly. We need to leave," he announced cheerfully. The term potential Luna made me shudder uncontrollably. Did everyone in this house think that Eric and I? No. Impossible. The very idea was absurd. With a heavy heart, I rose to face whatever new terror awaited outside. Chapter 242. No, how did she become his mate? I whispered, tears still welling up in my eyes as I stared at Leo in disbelief. The term potential Luna he'd casually thrown at me was beyond shocking. Did everyone in this pack actually think Eric and I were? The very idea made me shudder. Leo glanced at my tear-streaked face and frowned. "You better stop crying. Our Alpha doesn't like she-wolves who cry." He warned bluntly. Be careful or he might abandon you somewhere. His warning only made fresh tears spill down my cheeks. I couldn't help it. Everything about this situation was terrifying. Hurry up, Leo said, clearly losing patience. Alpha's patience is limited. He won't wait for you forever. With that final warning, he turned and went back downstairs, leaving me alone with my despair. Eric had actually sent someone to fetch me again. It seemed I truly had no choice but to go out today, despite desperately wanting to hide in this room forever. I wiped my tears with shaking hands. What would happen to me this time? Would I witness more violence? More silver bullets flying past my head? Resigned to my fate, I quickly washed my face in the adjoining bathroom. I changed into another set of Eric's oversized clothes. There was nothing else available, and took a deep breath. Before leaving, I pulled out my phone. If something happened to me today, I at least wanted Scarlett to know my final wishes. I composed a message titled Final Words, and began detailing all my last arrangements. Who should inherit my healing books? What to tell my mother if she was ever found? Even who should take care of my collection of rare herbs? The message was extensive, but it gave me a strange sense of peace. With one last look around the room, I tucked my phone away and headed downstairs to meet whatever fate awaited me. Scarlett's POV. This pastry is amazing, Hazel commented as we enjoyed our meal at the cafe on Thornwood Street. I was about to respond when my phone vibrated. A message from Emma appeared titled Final Words. I nearly choked on my tea as I scanned the ridiculously detailed message. It included everything from who should inherit her healing books to instructions for her funeral ceremony. What's wrong? Hazel asked, noticing my expression. Emma must be scared out of her wits, I replied, both amused and slightly exasperated. She actually prepared last words because Eric is taking her somewhere. I couldn't believe how dramatic Emma was being. I'd never seen her, usually so bold and outspoken, reduced to such a state of fear. Just how terrifying was Eric to her? I wondered aloud. I'd tried repeatedly to reassure her that Eric was reliable despite his intimidating demeanor, but Emma clearly didn't believe a word of it. Hazel looked skeptical. Is that Alpha Blackwood really reliable? Emma's call earlier sounded genuinely terrified. He is, I insisted. Emma's just not used to being around someone like him. The European territories operate differently than what she's accustomed to. Who could get used to that? Hazel countered with a raised eyebrow. Being around rogue wolves and silver bullet confrontations isn't exactly normal for most of us. I smiled playfully. All right, what about you following Connor? Connor Reynolds might seem like just a skilled healer to most, but Roman had hinted that he had his own hidden depths. The Reynolds pack had been consolidating significant power in recent years, and not all of it through traditional means. Hazel looked genuinely puzzled. Him? He's not as thrilling as Alpha Thorn. I realized she truly didn't know the full picture about Connor's activities. Interesting. Before I could respond, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Few people had this specific contact, making it immediately suspicious. Hello, I answered cautiously. It's me, came a voice I instantly recognized. Darian Morrison. My body tensed immediately. What do you want? I snapped, fury already rising within me. When are you coming back to the European territories? He asked, his tone infuriatingly casual. I was bewildered. I understood Emma asking because she was scared. But Darian? What business did he have with my whereabouts? I'm waiting for you in the European territories, baby, he added. The word baby sent a disgusted shiver down my spine. My wolf chorus snarled beneath my skin. Are you sick? I retorted. How are you even in the European territories? The Morrison family's ties to the Thorn Pack had been severed by Roman years ago. Darian had been a hunted rogue ever since. Yeah, I'm sick, he sneered, his voice dropping lower. My promised mate is shamefully chasing other alphas. The phrase promised mate ignited my fury like nothing else. Promised mate your ass! I exploded, drawing concerned looks from nearby diners. It brought back memories of the two absurd potential pairings mentioned in my youth without my knowledge or consent, one with Alexander Amber through formal arrangement, and the other, based merely on some elder's casual words, with Darian. And now he dared to bring it up again? After everything? Darian chuckled darkly. That mouth of yours, I'll tear it off sooner or later. Just you wait. I'll tear yours off first. I shot back, white-hot rage coursing through me. That works too, Darian replied with disturbing smoothness. I'll sit and wait for you to tear it, my lovely promised mate, emphasizing lovely mockingly. I hung up without another word, my hand shaking with anger. That bastard Darian Morrison was back in the European territories. Did Roman know? Had he allowed it? It seemed impossible, given their history, third persons. Across the table, Hazel Walsh observed Scarlett's furious expression with concern. What happened? She asked gently. Nothing. Let's eat, Scarlett dismissed, though her eyes still blazed with anger, as she inwardly cursed Darian, that opportunistic rogue wolf who dared to return after being exiled for years. Just as they finished their meal, Scarlett's phone rang again. It was Roman Thorne. The driver is here to pick you up, waiting outside the restaurant, he informed her, his voice carrying that gentle but unmistakably authoritative tone. I can go back myself, Scarlett protested mildly. The driver has already arrived, Roman stated firmly, brooking no argument. Oh, all right then. Scarlett quickly accepted, knowing that particular tone well. She said goodbye to Hazel and made her way to the sleek black car waiting outside. Throughout the ride back to Shadow Valley, she remained lost in thought, her anger still simmering. Unable to contain it any longer, she pulled out her phone and called Darian back. When he answered, she unleashed a torrent of curses that would have made even hardened pack enforcers blush. On the other end, Darian sighed, sounding almost wounded. Scarlett, you're being excessively biased. He understood she sided with Roman Thorne, but her verbal abuse seemed unwarranted to him. Stop pretending, Scarlett raged, her voice sharp with years of accumulated anger. You're just a backstabbing rogue wolf. She hung up again, leaving Darian listening to the dial tone. His initial hiss of frustration quickly transformed into a dark chuckle. Ungrateful little wolf, he murmured, a dangerous edge to his voice. Nearby, Ryan Hayes watched with thinly veiled concern. She hates you for betraying Alpha Thorne's trust. She definitely won't treat you well. Was that betrayal? Darian questioned, his amber eyes flashing. Ryan paused thoughtfully. The situation back then had been complicated. Darian's actions had, perhaps inadvertently, exposed dangers that ultimately helped Roman consolidate power, though it had resulted in the Morrison family's exile. Even so, Alpha Thorne won't let you off, Ryan mused, expressing reservations about Darian's sudden return to the European territories, when they still had rogue pack matters to handle elsewhere. Seeing Darian's call to Scarlett, however, made his haste understandable. Both Roman Thorne and Darian Morrison were drawn to Scarlett Winters with an intensity that defied logic. Ryan braced himself for the inevitable clash. The little princess is returning? He asked, anticipating the fallout. Yeah, Darian confirmed with a satisfied smile. Roman's business dealings tying up old pack alliances are almost wrapped up. This explained Darian's urgency. He wanted to be positioned in the European territories before Scarlett's return. Scarlett's POV. As my car approached the entrance to Shadow Valley, I spotted a figure standing stubbornly in the middle of the road. Pack guards surrounded him, trying unsuccessfully to move him away, but his eyes remained fixed on my approaching vehicle. It was Marcus Winter. The guards prepared to use force as my car drew closer, but I signaled the driver to stop. Lowering the window slightly, I fixed Marcus with a cold stare. Alpha Winter, what is the meaning of this? I asked, my voice as frigid as the winter air. Seeing my car stop, Marcus used all his strength to break free from the guards and rushed forward. Scarlett, he called out, his voice hoarse and filled with weariness. I studied him silently, noting how much weight he'd lost. His unshaven chin and rumpled clothes gave him a haggard appearance, a far cry from the proud Alpha who had once looked down on me. My wolf chorus stirred beneath my skin, recognizing the biological father who had never truly acted as one. Marcus took a deep, shaky breath. Can you talk to Alpha Thorne? Ask him to let the winter pack go? The desperation in his voice was palpable. I could see the regret in his eyes, regret for how he had treated me, for how he had favored Grace over his own biological daughter, for how gently he had handled Daniel's actions against me. If only he had recognized my worth sooner. If only he had realized that the daughter he cast aside had been raised by the feared Shadow King of the Eastern Territories, a wolf who had given me the love and protection Marcus never did. The price the winter pack has paid recently is heavy enough, Marcus continued, his voice breaking. It was clear from his demeanor just how crippling Roman's systematic dismantling of the winter pack had been. Through business maneuvers and strategic alliances, Roman had methodically isolated them, even weakening their traditional allies like the Amber Pack. I raised an eyebrow, silently encouraging him to continue. Marcus explained that the Rincon wolves had been pushed so far that no wolf pack was willing to work with them anymore. The winter pack was being slowly strangled, isolated from all possible support. He didn't finish his thought, but the meaning was clear. Roman Thorn intended to drive them to the point of begging. Chapter 243, Why Was It You? Scarlet's P.O. Marcus Winter stood before my car, his once proud posture now bent with desperation. I observed him through the window with detached interest, noting how different he looked from the powerful alpha I'd first encountered upon my return to the Northern Territories. His clothes were rumpled, his face haggard with stubble and dark circles under his eyes. Alpha Thorn has been relentless, Marcus said, his voice breaking slightly. Every new business venture I've started, every attempt to salvage something for my new family. I understood exactly what he meant, without him needing to spell it out. After Marcus tried pulling his assets from the failing winter pack, hoping to start fresh and shield himself from their collapse, Roman had methodically blocked every path forward. Nothing Marcus touched could flourish under Roman's shadow. If these problems aren't resolved soon, I'll have nothing left, Marcus admitted, his eyes pleading. Nothing for my twins, nothing for your new family with Jennifer Moore? I finished for him, my voice deliberately cold. Marcus flinched at my directness. Scarlet, please, can you speak to Alpha Thorn? Ask him to stop? I studied his face, searching for any trace of the father who should have protected me, who should have believed me when I told the truth about Grace's attack. I found nothing but self-serving fear. So, I asked simply, the two syllables carrying all the ice of the winter wind around us. Marcus blinked, momentarily confused by my response. So, it's enough, he repeated, more urgently now. The winter pack is in chaos. The price we've paid is sufficient. I tilted my head slightly. If you say so, then yes, it probably is enough. Hope flickered across Marcus's face like a candle in a storm. Really? He rushed to capitalize on what he perceived as my softening. Scarlet, regarding everything that happened before, I've thought a lot recently. Your mother wasn't really wrong. Grace was always by her side. I raised an eyebrow, my wolf Cora growling beneath my skin at the mere mention of Grace. You don't know, Grace was very well behaved as a child, Marcus continued earnestly. From childhood, she was sensible, courteous, and knew how to care for family. That's why Sarah unconsciously favored her when those things happened. Actually, But what can be done? I interrupted, having no interest in his excuses. I can't make decisions regarding my mate's matters. Marcus's eyelids twitched violently as my meaning registered. What do you mean you can't make decisions? I smiled coldly. I can't help you with your new company's issues. The hope that had been building in his eyes shattered instantly. It was almost satisfying to watch, though I felt no true pleasure in his suffering, merely a detached sense of karmic justice. Let's go, I instructed my driver Mark with a dismissive flick of my hand. Scarlet, you can't do this, Marcus called desperately through the narrowing window gap. I am, after all, your. I pressed the button, raising the tinted window before he could finish claiming the title of father, a role he had never truly fulfilled. As the car pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of Marcus Winter standing alone on the road, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Third person's POV. The sleek black car sped away, leaving Marcus Winter standing in its wake, a chill seeping into his bones that had nothing to do with the winter air. Panic gripped him as he contemplated the complete destruction of his new business ventures. The winter pack was already in ruins, but he had hoped to salvage something for himself and his new family. Scarlet's glacial attitude had destroyed that hope. His resentment bubbled up, directed not at her or Roman Thorn, but squarely at Sarah Winter. This is all her fault, he muttered bitterly, if she hadn't mishandled the relationship between the girls. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Checking the screen, he saw Sarah's name and felt his anger flare hotter. He answered with a sharp, "What?" but instead of Sarah's usual hysterics, her voice came through unnervingly calm. "I need to see you." The unexpected composure momentarily cooled his fury. Something about her tone felt wrong, dangerous even. "What is it?" he asked gruffly, suddenly wary. "You're at Crimson Ridge Estates, aren't you?" she asked, her voice still eerily controlled. Then, without warning, that unnatural calm shattered. "You put that woman Jennifer in the villa at Crimson Ridge Estates, didn't you?" Sarah roared, her rage exploding through the phone. Marcus pulled the device away from his ear, ears ringing from the volume of her accusation. Already on edge from his encounter with Scarlett, this new attack pushed him over the edge. "Sarah Winter, our mate bond is finished," he shouted back. "If you dare go looking for her, I won't let you off easy." He hung up abruptly, his hand shaking with fury. In his mind, Sarah was solely responsible for all their current troubles. She had favored Grace over Scarlett. She had created the environment that led to Scarlett's cold dismissal of their family. And now she was threatening his new family, just as his twins were newly born. The thought of Roman Thorne's continued vengeance, of being completely ruined financially, filled him with a dread that bordered on physical pain. I lay in the pack healing den, the sterile white walls closing in around me. Just hours ago, I had nearly died from the shock of discovering the ultimate betrayal by the person I trusted most, Grace Winter. The evidence had been undeniable. Grace had not only known about Marcus's affair with Jennifer Moore, she had facilitated it. She had brought Jennifer into our pack, into our financial dealings, and Jennifer was Grace's aunt, Martha's sister, the sister of the rogue wolf servant who had abandoned Scarlett as an infant. The phone slipped from my fingers as Marcus hung up on me. A scream tore from my throat, raw and primal. Ah! Why? Why had it turned out like this? The person I had favored above all others, even above my own biological daughter. It was Grace who had orchestrated my downfall. Why? Why do this to me? I wailed, pounding my chest with my fists, my entire body trembling with a pain that transcended the physical. The pack healers rushed to restrain me, but I pushed past them with strength born of pure rage. I fled the healing den, my feet carrying me back to the winter pack house without conscious direction. The fury churning within me propelled me forward, but as I reached the familiar doorstep of our pack house, an unnerving calm descended upon me. My tears fell silently as the wind whipped my hair, the cold seeping into my heart until it felt like a block of ice. I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The first thing I saw was Grace, sitting motionless in the living room. She had been that way for hours, according to Ben, our pack servant. He had presented her with the damning evidence. Photos of her meetings with Jennifer, call logs, Jennifer's pack employment records that Grace had personally facilitated. Daniel sat nearby, his face impassive, having already reviewed and passed on the evidence to Grace. Neither of them spoke as I entered, though Grace's eyes widened with unmistakable fear. "Mom," she whimpered, her voice small and frightened. I stood silently, studying her face, the face I had loved and protected for so many years, even at the expense of my relationship with my biological daughter. I felt nothing but emptiness as I looked at her. "You knew from the start," I said finally, my voice chillingly flat. "You knew everything, all of it." The calm I had felt at the doorstep abruptly shattered. "And you were the one who brought Jennifer into this pack's financial dealings. Tell me why. Why did you betray me?" Grace trembled violently, her fingers clutching at the arm of the sofa as if it could save her from my fury. "Mom," my voice quieted again, becoming eerily calm yet terrifyingly precise. "You knew about that woman being with your father, getting pregnant, having the twins. You knew everything. You even helped arrange it." The storm of rage returned, followed immediately by a wave of utter devastation. My composure finally broke completely, tears streaming down my face as I stared at the daughter I had chosen over everything else. "Why was it you? Why was it you?" I repeated, my voice breaking. "I gave up even my own daughter for you." Memories flooded my mind, covering up Grace's role in the rogue wolf attack on Scarlett, dismissing Scarlett's claims, neglecting her needs while catering to Grace's every whim. I had chosen so badly, so blindly. "Even when all the evidence was right in front of me, I still chose to protect you," I continued, my voice hollow with disbelief. "And now you tell me the root of the Winter Pack's destruction lies with you?" Grace could only sob, cowering away from me. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry," she repeated, the words tumbling out in a desperate stream. Her apologies rang hollow and ironic. After everything she had done, after all she had orchestrated, sorry was meaningless. I closed my eyes, my entire body trembling uncontrollably as a hatred I had never before experienced washed over me. "I hate you, Grace Winter," I whispered, the words falling like stones in the silent room. "I hate you. I hate you." Grace's face crumpled as she listened to my repeated words of hatred, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps as if she couldn't draw enough air into her lungs. Chapter 244, The Winter Pack Shattered. The Winter Pack house stood silent after Sarah's explosive departure. Grace sat on the sofa, tears streaming down her face. Her silver-poisoned body felt heavy with the weight of her exposed betrayal. She looked up as footsteps approached, desperate for any sign of compassion. "Brother," Grace choked out, barely audible. Daniel Winter stood before her, his face hard as stone. The brotherly affection that once warmed his eyes had vanished completely, replaced by icy indifference. Without a word, he turned his back and walked away, his footsteps echoing coldly as he retreated to his room. That simple gesture, the turning of his back, devastated Grace more thoroughly than Sarah's outburst. This wasn't anger. This was complete rejection. Pain tightened in her chest as she watched the last person who might have stood by her walk away. Fresh tears flowed unchecked, her suppressed wolf whimpering uselessly beneath her silver-poisoned skin. Alone in the vast living room, Grace felt the full force of her isolation. Her schemes had finally collapsed, burying her beneath the rubble of her own making. Scarlett's POV. I settled into the sofa at Shadow Valley, watching the Pack news feed rather than my phone. The broadcast suddenly cut to breaking news. Major incident reported. A violent assault involving a prominent Pack Luna occurred in the Northern Territories today. Details are still emerging. I leaned forward, squinting at the blurry footage. The figure being restrained looked disturbingly familiar. My phone buzzed with Emma's call. "Emma? Scarlett, that's Sarah. Sarah Winter seems to have attacked someone." Emma's voice was frantic. "She attacked someone!" I gasped, my eyes fixed on the screen now showing Sarah Winter clearly, her clothes torn and bloodied, her hair wild as Pack enforcers restrained her. "It's not seems like, it's real," I confirmed. "It's already on Pack networks." "Moon Goddess, has she gone mad?" Emma exclaimed. I leaned closer to the screen. "Let me see who she attacked." "Are you watching the feed?" Emma asked. "Yes." "Don't bother looking, it must be the mistress, Jennifer Moore," Emma declared confidently. "What else would drive a Luna to such extremes?" I looked closer as the camera zoomed in. Emma was right. The woman being rushed to emergency care was Jennifer Moore, Marcus's mistress and Grace's aunt. "Sarah must have been driven to utter fury," I murmured, processing the implications. "Eh?" Emma questioned. "If she's this furious, why didn't she deal with Grace first? It seems strange she would attack the mistress, but leave Grace unharmed. Just how important is Grace to her?" I considered this point. It did seem odd that Sarah's rage targeted Jennifer when Grace's betrayal cut deeper. "She's the treasure Sarah Winter held in her palm since childhood," I replied. "Perhaps she still couldn't bear to harm Grace directly." "After ruining the Winter Pack like this, she's still a treasure?" Emma scoffed. "If she still protects Grace after all this, Grace must be more than just an adopted daughter to her." The level of devotion was suspicious, especially knowing Grace had orchestrated the affair that destroyed Sarah's family. What could she be? Surely not her biological daughter, I countered. "Giving birth isn't something Marcus could easily miss. Seeing how much she treasures Grace, I'd almost believe Sarah gave birth to her," Emma admitted. The idea was compelling given Sarah's extreme protectiveness, but reality intervened. Marcus isn't a fool. How could he not know if she actually gave birth? "True," Emma conceded reluctantly. If she wasn't Sarah's biological child, then Sarah's extreme devotion was truly baffling. "All right, let's not dwell on this," I said, changing the subject. "Have you calmed down now?" I recalled Emma's earlier distress with Eric. She sounded more composed now, despite her protests. "I can't calm down," Emma insisted. "You have no idea how terrified I was. Thankfully, nothing happened on the outing later." "It's not like danger lurks constantly," I reasoned. There's usually a reason when danger occurs. I still can't calm down, Emma repeated, though she definitely sounded steadier. Where's Alpha Blackwood? I asked. He went out, Emma replied, relief evident in her voice. Just then, Roman returned to the villa. Hunter Stone was supporting him slightly. Got to go, I told Emma quickly before hanging up. Hunter nodded respectfully. Miss Winters, Alpha Thorne had a few drinks. Okay, I understand, I replied, rising to take over from Hunter. I caught the faint scent of alcohol on Roman. Strangely, it wasn't unpleasant. I realized my reaction to certain smells depended entirely on the wolf they came from. From someone I loved, even harsh scents felt comforting. Hunter placed a bag on the coffee table. Alpha Thorne brought this back for you. What is it? Chestnut cake, Hunter explained. Alpha Thorne said you would definitely like it. I smiled, touched by his thoughtfulness. I had loved chestnut cake in the European territories, but found northern versions too sweet. That Roman remembered this detail perfectly. After Hunter left, I helped Roman sit. As I went to stand, his hand suddenly clasped my waist and pulled me onto his lap. Startled, I wrapped my arms around his neck. What are you doing? He pressed his forehead against mine, our breaths mingling. I'll get you some water, I offered, thinking I should also prepare a cool towel for his chest. His warm palm cupped my face tenderly. Scarlet? So good, he murmured, sounding unusually content. Good? What's good? I asked, smiling slightly. Scarlet is mine. His declaration hung in the air between us, simple yet profound. Warmth spread through my chest. Yes, I was his, and he was mine. Our bond defied all odds stacked against us. After hanging up, Emma's stomach rumbled loudly. With Eric out of the villa, this seemed the perfect opportunity to sneak to the kitchen without facing the intimidating Alpha. She tiptoed from her room. Just as she reached the staircase, Anna, the pack servant, rushed toward her, face pale with alarm. Miss Chase, you need to go see. The Alpha is injured. Anna's voice was tight with anxiety. Emma's eyelid twitched violently. Ah? He? Where is he? Downstairs. Emma hesitated, unsure of her role. Were she and Eric really close enough for her to be summoned? Still, remembering how he saved her during the airport chase, she felt obligated to check on him. Why wasn't he sent to the pack healer if he's injured? She asked as they descended the stairs. I don't know, Anna replied, clearly shaken. There's so much blood. Downstairs, Emma saw Eric seated in the living room. A pack healer worked diligently to staunch the bleeding from his left shoulder. His shirt was torn and blood-soaked. Let's move to the operating room, the healer instructed. The silver bullet is still lodged deep in the muscle. Emma froze. Silver bullet? Had he encountered that kind of situation again? The randomness of safety around Eric felt like a terrifying lottery weighted toward danger. She resolved never to go out with this Alpha again. The risk was unbearable. Eric's gaze found her. His amber eyes narrowed slightly, somehow still commanding despite his injury. Come here, he ordered, his voice strained but authoritative. Emma flinched. You should go to the operating room first, she stammered, noticing the villa surprisingly had such a facility. The sight of his blood-soaked shoulder made her feel faint. She had a low tolerance for blood. Eric still exuded danger, even while injured. The power radiating from him, combined with the scent of blood, made Emma's legs weak with fear. She couldn't step forward, terrified of what he might ask of her. Chapter 2 of Under normal circumstances, I imagined Tristan would have dragged Leo away before he could finish speaking, but this time he seemed intent on saving himself first. Without waiting for Eric's response, Tristan vanished down the hallway with impressive speed. Eric's expression had darkened dangerously. He stared coldly at Leo, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. Continue. The tone sent a visible shiver down Leo's spine. Only then did he seem to notice the storm brewing in Eric's eyes. Alpha. Leo stammered, his bravado evaporating instantly. I could almost see the gears turning in his mind as realization dawned. His eyes widened with panic. Actually, I have things to do too. I'll send you the instructions via pack comms, he blurted, backing away quickly. As he turned to flee, I heard him mutter something about Tristan's betrayal under his breath. With Tristan and Leo gone, only Eric and I remained in the hallway. I tried to gently pull my face away from his grip, but his fingers tightened instinctively. Still hiding? He questioned, amber eyes piercing into mine. Let go of me, I protested, annoyed that he hadn't bothered to refute Leo's potential Luna comment. I squirmed slightly against his hold. It hurts. What kind of wolf is this man? I wondered silently. His grip was so strong it felt like my bones might snap under the pressure. Hearing my complaint of pain, Eric paused for a moment before finally releasing my chin. I resisted the urge to rub the spot where his fingers had been. Go make me some porridge, he ordered abruptly, as if we'd been discussing food all along. I blinked in confusion. Huh? Porridge? Apple and millet porridge, he specified without missing a beat. My eyes widened slightly in surprise. Apple and millet porridge. That was something I actually knew how to make. Well, sort of. I'd attempted it once for Scarlett when she had a fever. Wait, I questioned, suddenly remembering something. Isn't there a pack cook? Already dismissed, Eric replied flatly. I was completely baffled. Dismissed? Why? When I first arrived, there wasn't a cook. Then one appeared for just a day or two. This man was associated with Roman Thorn. Surely he wasn't short of resources for household staff? Why? I couldn't help asking. A more pressing concern suddenly occurred to me. If the cook was gone, did that mean I was responsible for my own meals now? Or worse, for his meals too? Poor cooking skills, Eric stated simply, as if that explained everything. I thought she was pretty good. I countered instinctively. I hadn't been particularly picky about the food since arriving. Given everything else happening, meal quality had been the least of my concerns. Eric didn't respond further. He simply turned and headed toward his room, leaving me standing alone in the hallway with my unanswered questions. Left without an alternative, I pouted slightly and made my way downstairs to the kitchen. The kitchen layout was spacious and modern, different from what I was used to at home, but familiar enough to navigate. Eric's was an open-plan design with gleaming stainless steel appliances that looked barely used. I found the millet in a labeled container and spotted a bowl of apples on the counter. As I started gathering ingredients for the porridge, I decided to call Scarlett. The call connected quickly. Emma, Scarlett answered, sounding slightly out of breath. What are you doing? I asked, wondering why she sounded winded. Just dealt with Roman. He only just returned, she explained vaguely. There was something in her tone that made me decide not to press for details. Oh, I acknowledged simply, recognizing that tone. What about you? Calling at this hour? Scarlett inquired, changing the subject. I'm cooking porridge for Eric, I replied, measuring out the millet. You know how? Scarlett asked, her skepticism evident even through the phone. Hey, are you looking down on me? You ate it before, I retorted defensively, feeling a flush creep up my neck. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Are you sure that was porridge? Scarlett finally asked, her tone teasing. Why wouldn't it be? I countered, though a memory was starting to resurface. Scarlett laughed, the sound light and genuine. Who cooks porridge into a solid cake? The memory hit me then, my first attempt at making millet porridge for Scarlett when she was feverish. I'd somehow managed to cook it down into a dense paste with apple chunks unevenly distributed throughout. The consistency had been closer to cement than porridge. That was my first time. Be grateful, I huffed, embarrassed by the reminder. Don't underestimate me, I cook much better now. Really? Scarlett sounded thoroughly unconvinced. Of course, I insisted proudly. That spectacular failure had actually motivated me to practice cooking more, wanting to be able to care for my loved ones properly if needed. Wait, Scarlett suddenly interjected, her tone shifting to something more serious. Why are you cooking porridge for Eric? Aren't you scared to death of him? I fell silent, my hands pausing in their work. Yes, the fear was real. Eric Blackwood was terrifying in a way that went beyond ordinary pack alphas. His cold demeanor, his lethal efficiency, the casual way he dealt with violence, all of it frightened me to my core. But he had also saved me, multiple times now. Even though his methods had been harsh and his manner frightening, I couldn't completely ignore the fact that he had rescued me when I needed it most. Wrestling with the conflicting feelings of gratitude and deep-seated fear, I couldn't help but mumble softly, he got injured. Chapter 246, wipe his whole body? He got injured? I asked, somewhat concerned but not entirely surprised. In Roman's circle, injuries were almost commonplace, especially for someone like Eric Blackwood. Yes, a silver bullet, Emma explained, her voice a mixture of worry and disbelief. Is he all right? I asked, though I knew it would take more than a single silver bullet to bring down an alpha of Eric's caliber. He's walking around already, Emma said, sounding stunned. Is that normal? For an alpha of his strength? Yes, I confirmed. Where did he get shot? His shoulder. There was so much blood. Emma's voice trailed off. I could picture her pale face as she described the scene. After a moment, Emma shifted the conversation. It looks like Sarah Winter is going to be detained now. I just looked closely at the PAC newsfeed. She's being charged with assault causing grievous harm, maybe even attempted murder, depending on the outcome. That caught my attention immediately. Did that woman, Jennifer Moore, die? I hadn't seen the end of the news report because Roman had returned midway. All I'd seen was Sarah being led away in restraints by territory enforcers. She was sent to the PAC healing den. There's no update yet, but they said one of the twins was injured too, Emma informed me. One of the twins? I repeated, genuinely shocked. I recalled how kind and maternal Sarah had seemed towards Grace when I first returned to the Winter PAC territory. I'd thought her a benevolent Luna, devoted to her family. Now, seeing that her rage extended even to an innocent pup, what kindness could possibly reside in her heart? Be careful, Emma warned. The Winter PAC, especially Daniel, will definitely look for you now. Look for me? I questioned, wondering if they expected me to use Roman's influence to lessen the charges against Sarah. Let me tell you, in the Winter PAC, only you are the outsider. All the others stick together, even now, Emma stated bluntly. Though her tone was sarcastic, I knew she was right. Despite everything that had happened, the Winter PAC's instinct would be to close ranks, with me firmly on the outside. Just wait and see. Daniel Winter will definitely contact you, Emma predicted. With the family fractured and Sarah detained, Daniel was the most likely one to approach me, seeking leverage or aid through my connection to Roman. I'm heading back to the Eastern Territories tomorrow, I announced, ready to leave this mess behind. Really? Emma asked, her tone slightly skeptical. Barring any accidents, yes, I confirmed. Emma sighed audibly. With your luck and connections, accidents seem to happen frequently. We talked for a while longer about the Winter PAC's implosion, about Grace's betrayal, and about Emma's uncomfortable situation with Eric. Finally, I wished her luck with her cooking and hung up, turning my attention back to Roman, who had fallen asleep on the sofa beside me. Emma's POV. After ending the call with Scarlett, I focused on finishing the porridge. I was determined to make it perfectly this time, neither too thick nor too thin, with the apples softened but not mushy. I stirred carefully, monitoring the consistency. When it was finally done, I poured it into a bowl, feeling pleased with myself. This looked nothing like the cement-like concoction I'd once served Scarlett. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my courage and carried the bowl upstairs to Eric's room. I knocked lightly on the door and entered when I heard his deep voice say, "Come in." Eric was sitting up in bed, speaking on the phone. His loose robe covered the bandage on his shoulder blade, but left much of his powerful chest exposed. The intricate PAC tattoo that extended from his neck down onto his chest captivated my attention. The markings looked dangerous, yet simultaneously exuded a strange sense of security. I felt my throat tighten unexpectedly, and an unfamiliar warmth spread through my body. I quickly averted my gaze, embarrassed by my reaction. No need. Eliminate the root of the problem. Eric spoke decisively into the phone, his voice carrying a menacing edge that sent a chill down my spine. This alpha is truly dangerous, I thought, placing the steaming porridge on the small table beside his bed. The porridge is ready. It's still a bit hot. Let it cool before you eat, I said, eager to leave the room as quickly as possible. Eric ended his call and stared at the bowl, watching the rising steam without a word. He seemed lost in thought. His silence made me increasingly uncomfortable. I'll head out first, I said, already backing toward the door. Is this all? Eric frowned. I paused mid-step. Huh? No side dishes? He clarified, his amber eyes narrowing slightly. Side dishes? Was he serious? You didn't say you needed side dishes, I replied, trying to keep the incredulity from my voice. Even if he had, it wouldn't have mattered. I only knew how to make various types of porridge, not actual dishes. My mother had always handled the cooking at home. Does that need to be said? Eric retorted, his tone suggesting he found my response lacking. I felt completely speechless. What kind of response was that? Of course, one needed to specify what they wanted. I don't know how, I stated firmly, shaking my head. There was no point pretending I had culinary skills I didn't possess. Eric looked at me, his silence suddenly feeling unnervingly intense. I swallowed nervously. Well, would you like to hire another pack cook who cooks well? I suggested hopefully. My own cooking was barely passable for myself. Given Eric's pickiness even with the previous professional cook, my attempts would surely fail to meet his exacting standards. Leave, Eric finally said, his expression unreadable. Okay. I turned to go, relieved to be dismissed. But just as I reached the door, his voice stopped me again. Make some mushroom chicken porridge for breakfast tomorrow and some light side dishes too. I turned back, looking at him pleadingly. But I really don't know how to cook side dishes. I didn't dare refuse outright, but I needed him to understand my genuine inability. This wasn't me being difficult, I simply lacked the skills he was expecting. Don't you have tutorial apps on your phone? Eric asked, sounding completely serious. I was bewildered. He knew about cooking apps? With his influence and resources, hiring a pack cook wouldn't be a significant expense. So why was he making things so difficult for me? I sniffled slightly but didn't dare argue further. All right then, I conceded reluctantly. A new thought occurred to me. Wait. There are no groceries in the fridge. Tristan will bring them, Eric replied dismissively. It seemed refusal was not an option. Feeling utterly defeated, I left Eric's room like a poor, pitiful pup, desperately wishing Scarlett could quickly find my mother and resolve everything, restoring peace to my world. I went downstairs and resignedly tidied up the kitchen, putting away the remaining millet and apples. Just as I was about to head back upstairs, Tristan arrived carrying a large bag of groceries. His timing was suspiciously perfect, as if he'd been waiting for me to finish with Eric. Potential Luna, he greeted respectfully, setting the bag on the counter. I recoiled internally. I'm not your potential Luna. Don't randomly call me that, I corrected quickly. The title implied a relationship with Eric that simply didn't exist and sent a wave of panic through me. Why was everyone in this house suddenly acting as though Eric and I were? The thought was too absurd to complete. Tristan just smiled without comment, making me wonder if anyone in this house actually listened to me. These are the things Alpha Blackwood requested. We'll have to trouble you for tomorrow morning's breakfast, he said, gesturing to the groceries. Unlike Leo, Tristan had a bit more tact, avoiding direct contradiction to my protest. I appreciated that small mercy, at least. I looked through the bag, examining the variety of vegetables, some of which I didn't even recognize. What are these called? I asked, holding up something green and leafy. As Tristan explained each ingredient, my anxiety grew. As for how to cook them, I'd have to rely on tutorial apps, as Eric had suggested. Seeing my obvious unfamiliarity with the ingredients, Tristan asked with some concern, "Can you manage?" I nodded hesitantly. I think I should be able to. I'd learned to make porridge from tutorials. Cooking dishes might involve some initial failure, but they should be edible. Probably. Okay then, Tristan accepted, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. By the way, he added, his tone becoming more serious, Alpha Blackwood might develop a fever tonight from the silver. Please keep an eye on him, and he absolutely cannot take a bath. Huh? How can I watch him? I protested immediately. I was a she-wolf. How could I possibly be expected to monitor an alpha, especially this alpha, to prevent him from bathing? The very idea was absurd. Just manage him a bit, Tristan suggested vaguely. Manage him? I repeated incredulously. Was that something I could do? I'm not his mate, nor part of his pack, I reminded Tristan sharply. Surely that task fell to someone bonded to him? Someone who didn't flinch every time he looked in their direction? Tristan persisted. But right now, you're the only she-wolf living under the same roof as Alpha Blackwood. So, please, I have to trouble you. The repeated polite request made it impossible for me to refuse outright, though everything in me wanted to. If he gets a fever tonight, please give him some fever medicine from the healer, Tristan continued. If it doesn't go down, you might need to assist with physical cooling. What physical? My mind struggled to keep up with what he was asking. These instructions sounded like caring for a sick pup, and rather troublesome at that. Why couldn't one of his pack members handle this? Tristan elaborated plainly, wipe his entire body with lukewarm water. I froze. His entire body? I stammered, hoping I'd misheard. Yes, Tristan confirmed nonchalantly, just like how Alpha Blackwood wiped you down the night before last when you had the fever. My world stopped. Chapter 47, 5 Steps to Dust, Emma's. Just like how Alpha Blackwood wiped you down the night before last when you had the fever. Tristan's words froze me to the spot. My mind couldn't process what he'd just said. I stood there, completely still, as he gave me a small nod and left the kitchen. I remained there, clutching the edge of the counter, for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The world seemed to spin around me. Eric Blackwood had wiped my entire body? When I was unconscious with fever? That explained why my clothes had disappeared that night. That explained why I had woken up wearing his oversized sweater. This can't be real, I whispered to myself, feeling my cheeks burn with embarrassment and something else I couldn't identify. My already chaotic emotions became a complete storm. The powerful, intimidating Alpha who terrified me to my core had seen me completely exposed, had touched my skin with those large, dangerous hands. The suggestion that I should now reciprocate this care, performing the same intimate service for him, felt like some bizarre fever dream. Is he serious? I murmured, aghast. How could I possibly do such a thing? The mere thought of approaching Eric's powerful body, of touching his skin, of being responsible for cooling his fever, it was unimaginable. I wasn't his mate. I wasn't even a member of his pack. I paced around the kitchen, trying to calm myself. There had to be some misunderstanding. Maybe Tristan was exaggerating. Maybe he meant Eric had simply placed a cool cloth on my forehead, not the alternative. I needed advice. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't actually expected to perform such an intimate task. I grabbed my phone and dialed Scarlett. Scarlett's POV. I had just finished tending to Roman after his evening with moonlight wine. I'd wiped his face and chest with cool water to prevent him from feeling unwell in the morning, tucked him into bed, and was disposing of the basin when my phone rang. Emma's name flashed on the screen. Scarlett, listen, I really can't do it, she blurted out the moment I answered, her voice pitched higher than normal. What can't you do? I asked, confused by her panicked tone. Physically cool Eric Blackwood, Emma practically shouted. All his pack members just left, dumped him on me, and told me to check if he gets a fever tonight, and that kind of care. I could hear her pacing frantically through the phone. Is this something I can do? Is this appropriate for me? I'm not his mate. She continued without pausing for breath. Did Eric's wolves even think before speaking? Telling me to wipe his whole body? It's just a fever from a silver wound. Is it really that complicated? I tried to interject, but Emma was on a roll. And what's worse, that's the reason he stripped my clothes off the other night. Did I need him to take care of me like that? Are there no pack healers or secure clinics in the European territories? The injustice seemed to fuel her anger further. And now they expect me to do the same for him? Are these words even humane for a wolf to suggest? I waited for her to take a breath before attempting to speak. If Alpha Blackwood is injured, especially with silver involved, he might develop a fever tonight, I explained carefully. You should give him some fever-reducing herbs first, and if that doesn't work. What's even more ridiculous, Emma cut me off, is he's short on pack resources. No, I confirmed. Then why doesn't he hire pack servants? He could afford 10 trained betas if he wanted. Emma's confusion was justified. Eric Blackwood was one of the wealthiest alphas in the European territories. His businesses spanned multiple continents. Does he want me as a free Omega servant? She demanded. I suppressed a small smile at her outrage. Because the young, pretty she-wolves try to use the opportunity to seduce him, maybe seeking a mating mark, I explained, recalling what Roman had once told me about Eric's peculiar staffing choices. Then hire old, less attractive ones, Emma retorted immediately. Those might be assassins sent by rival packs, I revealed. This wasn't an exaggeration. Eric had encountered such situations before. His position made him a target for numerous rivals who would use any means necessary to infiltrate his defenses, including sending seemingly harmless older wolves as domestic help. That's why he prefers solitude and trusts only his core enforcers, I added. His villas only ever have temporary, heavily vetted help. He avoids contact with potentially ill-intentioned wolves. Emma fell silent for a moment, absorbing this information. So tonight, I absolutely have to take care of him, right? She asked, her voice small and defeated. Yes, barring any complications with the silver, you probably need to, I confirmed gently. Emma groaned audibly. I hate that phrase, bearing any complications. With you and Roman, and now Eric, complications seem to be the norm, not the exception. I couldn't argue with that. Can't you send someone over? She pleaded. You're Roman's mate. Can't the Thornpack help? I'm afraid not easily, I replied hesitantly. What do you mean? Why the hesitation? Emma pressed. Mainly, I explained, choosing my words carefully, even if Roman agrees to send skilled Thornpack members, Eric has to agree to let them onto his territory. What if Roman orders it? He still has to agree. It's Eric's territory. I heard Emma's sigh of disappointment. She was just realizing that even the Shadow King wasn't omnipotent in another Alpha's core territory, especially not Eric Blackwood's. The thing is, I continued, wanting her to understand the full gravity of the situation, Alpha Blackwood is paranoid about security. From the moment you enter his villa grounds, it's full of advanced defenses, likely silver-laced traps, and wards. If someone he doesn't trust enters without permission, they could be neutralized within 5 steps. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. 5 steps. Neutralized? Emma repeated slowly. Standing when they enter, reduced to silver-laced dust and scattered. That's too cruel for any wolf, even an intruder, I added grimly. I knew this would frighten her, but Emma needed to understand the full reality of where she was staying. Eric wasn't just dangerous because of his alpha power and temperament, his entire territory was a lethal fortress. So his villa has lethal defenses everywhere? Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. Barring any deactivated zones he showed you, yes, I confirmed. So I could die at any moment if I wander into the wrong area? The fear in Emma's voice was palpable. Be careful not to wander or touch things randomly over there, I warned. You might trigger something deadly. Emma fell silent again, and I could almost picture her looking around the villa with new eyes, suddenly aware of the hidden dangers lurking in what had appeared to be just a luxurious residence. So before Roman can send anyone, I need to ask Eric's permission? She finally asked. Yes. I could sense her hope dwindling. Based on what she'd told me about Eric's behavior, like firing the cook after just a day, he seemed incredibly difficult to please regarding staff. What should I do? She asked despairingly. Go talk to him, I urged. Ask him directly if he'll accept help from Roman's pack members. Talk to him. I doubted Eric would ever agree, given his solitary nature. It was already a miracle he'd taken me in at all. If he says no, then we definitely can't send anyone, Scarlett stated firmly. Great. So I had to convince him first. I opened my mouth to respond, but Scarlett quickly cut me off. Oops, Roman's signaling me through the bond. Gotta go, talk later. I heard a faint rustling sound before the line went dead. I stared at my phone, listening to the dial tone with a sense of numbing despair. I desperately didn't want to provide such intimate care for Eric. Despite growing up in pack culture where gender boundaries were more fluid, especially in healing situations, this felt different. This was Eric Blackwood, a powerful, dangerous, and utterly terrifying alpha barely knew. Still, I had no choice. I had to at least try talking him into accepting help from Scarlett and Roman's people. With extreme reluctance, I dragged myself upstairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. My shuffling pace betrayed my complete unwillingness to face this situation. I reached Eric's door and paused, gathering my courage. I knocked gently. No answer. I knocked again, a bit louder this time. Still silence. A sudden fear gripped me. Had the silver wound worsened more quickly than expected? Had he already passed out from fever? Was he lying unconscious on the floor while I stood here hesitating? Panic overrode my sense of propriety. I pushed the door open without waiting for a response. Alpha Blackwood, are you? The words died in my throat as Eric walked out of the adjacent bathroom. A white towel hung low around his waist, clinging precariously to his hips. Water droplets cascaded down his incredibly muscular chest, following the sharply defined contours of his abdomen. His pack tattoo, visible earlier when I'd brought him porridge, now extended further than I'd realized, curving around his shoulder and down part of his back. The powerful markings seemed to enhance rather than detract from his physical perfection. His damp hair was slicked back from his face, revealing the strong angles of his jaw and cheekbones. His amber eyes found mine, narrowing slightly at my uninvited entrance. The sight of him, powerful, nearly naked, and freshly showered despite his injury and Tristan's warning, rendered me completely speechless. I barely had time to swallow before my mind went utterly blank. A rush of heat flooded my body, blood pounding in my ears so loudly I could barely think. Eric's gaze shifted slightly, moving from my eyes to somewhere lower on my face. His expression changed subtly, one eyebrow raising in what might have been surprise or amusement. I felt something warm trickle from my nose, and with horror, I realized what he was looking at. My hand flew to my face, fingers coming away stained red with blood. Chapter 248, Accidental Exposure and Escalating Panic. What are you looking at? Eric's voice cut through the air like ice. His amber eyes narrowed, his entire being radiating a frigid alpha aura that made me shiver. I snapped back to reality, suddenly aware I'd been staring. Nothing. I wasn't looking at anything, I stammered. I knocked, but you didn't answer. So you just barge in? He pressed, water still dripping down his muscular chest. No, I didn't. My mind felt completely stuck, words failing me. I quickly averted my gaze. The alpha possessed an overwhelmingly powerful presence. Even though I prided myself on not being easily swayed by looks, my entire body felt hot. Useless. I berated myself internally. Back in the Northern Territories, I'd seen plenty of attractive alphas and betas. Why was I reacting like this now? Lost in self-criticism, I didn't notice Eric approaching until I felt something warm against my lip. I jumped back instinctively. What are you doing? I stammered, heart pounding wildly. Eric held his finger before my eyes. It was stained red with blood. What's this? He asked. I froze. My already chaotic mind exploded with a buzz upon seeing blood on Eric's finger. I wiped under my nose and felt wetness. My hand came away red. A nosebleed? Now, of all the humiliating things that could happen. I have habitual nosebleeds? I offered weakly, the statement sounding more like a question. Eric's lips quirked slightly. Does it happen every time you look at an alpha? Ah, yes, I nodded enthusiastically, before processing what he'd actually said. No, that's not it. Was I really suggesting I was so unstable that merely looking at a powerful alpha would cause my nose to bleed? Whether I admitted it or not, that seemed to be exactly what had happened. Today was an accident, I tried to explain, though it sounded pathetic even to my own ears. A small smile touched Eric's lips. Get me a glass of water. Oh, okay. Relief washed over me at the change of subject. I turned quickly to leave, grateful for the reprieve. As I spun around, I felt a slight tug at the bottom of my hoodie, Eric's hoodie that I was wearing. Before I could process what was happening, there was a soft sound of fabric hitting the floor. I froze. Confused, I instinctively looked back. In an instant, my pupils constricted and my mind went completely blank with a resounding clang. On the floor lay Eric's bath towel. The alpha stood there in all his naked glory. Oh, moon goddess, help me. No, that I didn't, I stammered incoherently, shaking my head in panic. In my flustered state, I glanced up at Eric again, and my gaze inadvertently dropped lower. My breathing became rapid and shallow. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. With a thunderous bang, the bedroom door slammed shut inches from my face. If I hadn't jumped back, it would have hit me squarely. Silence descended like a heavy blanket. I stared at the closed door, then at the bath towel lying on the floor before me. A corner of the white towel was still caught on the zipper of my hoodie. I was completely aghast. What just happened? How did things turn out like this? Examining my zipper more closely, I could see that a thread from the towel had indeed snagged on it. It must have caught when I turned too quickly. This was truly unbelievable. In 22 years of life, I had never experienced such profound social death. With trembling hands, I detached the towel from my zipper and placed it carefully on a nearby chair. There was no way I was knocking on that door again. I practically ran back to my room, grabbed my phone, and immediately called Scarlett. She answered quickly. Did Eric agree? Scarlett, save me. I cried out desperately. She sighed audibly. What happened to you now? I just pulled off Eric's bath towel, I blurted out, my voice high-pitched with panic. Do you think he'll be so angry? He'll kill me? There was a long pause on the other end. What did you just say? Scarlett finally asked, sounding completely stunned. I said I pulled off Eric's bath towel. My voice cracked with tears. Are you serious? Scarlett asked slowly. I'm serious, I confirmed, then tried to explain the chaotic sequence of events. I described how I'd gone to ask him about additional help, how I'd accidentally barged in on him after his shower, the embarrassing nosebleed, and finally how the towel had somehow caught on my zipper when I turned to leave. I really didn't do it on purpose, I emphasized desperately. Okay, I believe you, Scarlett replied after a moment of silence. Really? Scarlett, you really believe me? Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by renewed panic. But will he believe me? My heart raced at the memory of his ice-cold expression just before he slammed the door. That alpha is terrifying, I wailed. I saw how he dealt with those rogues. I'm really scared he'll put on clothes, come downstairs, and just shoot me. Scarlett, maybe you should ask Roman to call him and spare my worthless life. Boo-hoo. Why are you crying again? Scarlett sighed. Boo-hoo, I'm really scared, I sobbed. Scarlett, you didn't see how terrifying he was. He won't, don't worry, she tried to reassure me. He will, he really will, boo-hoo, I insisted, recalling the glacial aura Eric had emitted earlier. His temper was completely unpredictable, and I had just managed to humiliate him in the worst possible way. What if he decided I wasn't worth the trouble? What if he thought this was some she-wolf trick to seduce him? For the next half hour, I cried into the phone while Scarlett tried various approaches to calm me down. I couldn't help it. The stress of the past few days had worn me down completely. Between the rogue wolf attacks, the silver bullets, being stranded with this dangerous alpha, and now this mortifying incident. It was all too much. Finally, Scarlett managed to get through to me. All right, for now, go apologize to Eric first. We'll deal with everything else when I get back. Okay, I agreed, my voice hoarse from crying. Good girl, go on. I'll be back tomorrow, she encouraged. Okay, I mumbled again, trying to draw strength from the promise of her return. After a few more words of comfort, Scarlett hung up. I sat listening to the dial tone for several moments, taking deep breaths to steady myself. From social death to sheer terror, only I, Emma Chase, could experience such an emotional roller coaster in a single evening. Eventually, I gathered my courage and went to the kitchen to get Eric the glass of water he'd asked for earlier. At least that was something concrete I could do to begin my apology. As I reached the staircase landing with the water glass in hand, I froze. Eric stood at the railing upstairs, now dressed in dark sweatpants and a loose t-shirt that did little to hide his powerful build. I could see the fresh bandage on his shoulder peeking out from beneath the shirt's collar. My heart leaped so violently that a few drops of water sloshed over the rim of the glass. Mr. Blackwood, I stammered, my voice barely audible. Eric looked down at me, his amber gaze steady and unreadable. Why are you crying? I touched my face, suddenly remembering the earlier nosebleed. I must look a complete mess, with dried blood under my nose and smeared across my cheek from when I'd wiped it, combined with my red, puffy eyes from crying. I lowered my head, unable to meet his gaze. Following Scarlett's advice, I whispered, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No matter what happened next, apologizing seemed like the right move. I silently resolved to move out immediately once Scarlett returned, even if it meant living at the Thornpack compound with all those intimidating wolves. Anything would be better than continuing to live alone with this alpha after tonight's disaster. Eric looked down at me from the top of the stairs, his expression unreadable as he observed my frightened, submissive posture. I couldn't see his face, but I felt his gaze on the top of my bowed head. What did you do wrong? He asked, his deep voice surprisingly calm. Without thinking, I mumbled, I shouldn't have pulled off your bath towel. Chapter 249, He Must Get a Fever Tonight. What did you do wrong? He asked, his deep voice surprisingly calm. Without thinking, I mumbled, I shouldn't have pulled off your bath towel. The moment those words left my mouth, I felt time freeze. My mind went completely blank. Oh no, Scarlett had specifically warned me not to mention that directly, just to say I was sorry. The alpha's oppressive aura made it impossible to focus properly. I didn't mean it like that, I stammered. desperately trying to fix my mistake. "Oh, then what did you mean?" he pressed, his tone unreadable. "I didn't do it on purpose," I insisted with all the sincerity I could muster. "It was truly an accident." His footsteps echoed loudly as he descended the stairs. Each step seemed to land directly on my racing heart. He stopped right in front of me, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. His well-defined fingers reached out and tilted my chin upward, forcing me to meet his gaze. I trembled inwardly at the contact. "Mr. Blackwood, drink some water," I offered, holding out the now half-empty glass with shaking hands. Images of what had happened earlier flashed through my mind unbidden. How could I have been so clumsy as to just turn around and accidentally pull off his towel? I wished the ground would open up and swallow me whole. Eric ignored the glass. Instead, his grip on my chin tightened slightly. "What did you see just now?" he asked, his amber eyes searching mine. My mind screamed. "Everything. I saw. That." Wait, could I say that? Obviously not. I shook my head frantically, backtracking. "I didn't see anything," I lied, meeting his sharp gaze with false confidence. "Absolutely nothing. In truth, I had seen it all. And how could Scarlett possibly say he has issues? It certainly didn't look like he couldn't perform. If he really couldn't, wouldn't that be a waste of such?" My inappropriate thoughts were interrupted by his sharp intake of breath. "Is that so?" he asked, his voice dropping dangerously low. I nodded vigorously. "Yes, I really didn't see anything. Rest assured, you're still perfectly innocent." But I wasn't innocent anymore, was I? He had seen me during my fever, and now I had seen him. The alpha let out a cold snort, released my chin, took the glass of water from my hand, and went back upstairs without another word. Only when I heard his door close did I clutch my chest, feeling like I could breathe again. Moon goddess. That was terrifying. Dealing with an alpha like Eric required a stronger heart than I possessed. Just as I was about to tiptoe back to my room, eager to escape this nightmarish evening, the villa phone rang downstairs. I hesitated, but with no one else to answer it, I reluctantly turned back. "Hello?" I answered tentatively. "Potential Luna, it's Leo," came the familiar voice. I winced inwardly, still with the potential Luna nonsense. Why did these wolves insist on calling me that? What part of my relationship with Eric suggested I was his potential mate? "Tonight, I'll have to trouble you to look after Alpha Blackwood," Leo continued, completely oblivious to my discomfort. "Absolutely do not let him take a bath." I felt a jolt of panic. "Ah? He already took a bath." "What?" Leo's exclamation was so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "Potential Luna, then you'll really have a tough night," he said gravely. "The Alpha will definitely get a fever." My stomach dropped. Bathing on the day of a silver wound injury? Even I knew that was dangerous. Was Eric's need for cleanliness so severe he couldn't bear it even for a short while? Why don't you come over?" I suggested desperately. I can't provide that kind of care. The very thought of physically cooling Eric's body made my face burn with embarrassment. "Don't worry," Leo dismissed my concern casually. "Alpha Blackwood is very quiet when he has a fever. He won't cause you too much trouble." I was speechless. Was this really about trouble? Did he not understand the inappropriateness of what he was asking me to do? "He's in your hands now," Leo declared with finality, promptly hanging up before I could argue further. I stared at the phone in disbelief. That irresponsible beta. According to Leo, Eric was definitely going to run a fever tonight because of his ill-advised bath. But I absolutely couldn't provide that kind of care. What would that even look like? I tried calling Scarlett's number several times in rapid succession, but there was no answer. Why weren't they picking up? If Scarlett needed Eric's permission to send someone, surely Eric wouldn't object to one of his own betas coming, right? It wasn't like they'd be in danger in their own alpha's territory. I tried calling Leo back twice more, but he didn't answer either. What was going on? He called me. I picked up, but now he wasn't answering my calls? This was ridiculous. Someone else had to be here tonight. With no other options left, I trudged back upstairs to ask Eric directly. Learning from my previous mistake, I knocked cautiously on his door and waited patiently for his response. "Come in," his deep voice called after a moment. I pushed the door open slightly but remained firmly in the doorway. No way was I stepping fully into that room after what had happened. "Mr. Blackwood," I began carefully, Scarlet Winters said she could send a Thornpack servant over. Is that all right? How troublesome. I never expected an alpha could be so difficult to care for. Eric raised an eyebrow. No, I felt deflated. Did he have to refuse so bluntly? Then, can Tristan or Leo come over? I tried again. If not Scarlet's people, surely his own subordinates would be acceptable? The response was equally firm. No. I was exasperated. This was impossible. No to this, no to that. What did he want? Did he really expect me to give him physical cooling if he got a fever? No, absolutely not. I couldn't do it. What if you get a fever tonight? I blurted out, unable to contain my frustration. Hearing this, Eric looked up from the book he'd been reading, his penetrating gaze unsettling me. I swallowed nervously. The pack healer who removed the silver bullet said you shouldn't bathe tonight, I explained, and that you'll definitely get a fever if you do. As I spoke, I noticed his eyes studying me intently. I fidgeted in the doorway, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. What else did he say? Eric asked, his voice unexpectedly soft. I took a deep breath. He also said that once you get a fever, the usual fever-reducing herbs are highly likely not to work and you'll need physical cooling. Leo had emphasized this repeatedly, suggesting fever medicine was indeed ineffective for Eric's reactions to silver. Upon hearing the words physical cooling, Eric visibly stiffened for a moment. Something flashed across his face. A memory, perhaps? His amber eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. I stood frozen in the doorway, the hallway light behind me throwing my shadow into his dimly lit room. He seemed to be studying me with unusual interest, his gaze lingering on my face for several long seconds. Was he remembering the night before last, when he had apparently done for me what I was now expected to do for him? The thought made heat rush to my cheeks. I didn't remember anything from my feverish state, but knowing he had seen me had touched me while I was unconscious. Eric continued to watch me, his expression unreadable, a strange tension filling the space between us. Chapter 250, Humiliation and a Late-Night Call. The cold bit through my blankets as I sat outside the Amberpack Estate's imposing gates. My wheelchair offered little protection against the harsh Northern Territory winds, and I pulled my coat tighter around my frail body. The silver poisoning had weakened me significantly, but desperation drove me here tonight. Everything had collapsed so quickly. Mother's arrest, father's abandonment, Daniel's coldness. The winter pack was in shambles. Without money for my treatment, death loomed closer each day. Alexander was my last hope. Miss Winter, please leave. Our alpha heir will not see you, the pack guard announced upon his return, not bothering to hide his disdain. I gripped the wheelchair's armrests tightly, feeling my nails dig into the padding. No, I must see him. Tell him if I don't see him, I won't leave. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, pleading, desperate, so different from the commanding tone I once used when the winter pack stood strong and Alexander looked at me with adoration. Back then, no wolf would dare dismiss me with such contempt. I remembered how they used to bow their heads when I passed, how they scrambled to fulfill my requests, the respect, the fear in their eyes when they addressed me as Miss Winter. Now even this common guard looked through me as if I were nothing. Please, I softened my tone, swallowing what little pride I had left, help me relay the message to him. This humiliation burned like acid in my chest, fueling my hatred. If only I could recover, I would make them all pay for treating me this way. I would show them the consequences of scorning someone they shouldn't have. The winter pack might be fractured, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. Suddenly, a regal figure emerged from the main house. Luna Victoria Amber approached with measured steps, her expensive fur coat catching the moonlight. I quickly composed my features, but I was a moment too late. Her eyes narrowed and a cruel smile played across her lips. "You wear that mask quite skillfully," she remarked derisively. I flinched at being caught showing my true feelings. Biting my lip, I lowered my head respectfully. "Luna Amber." "Here to see Alexander?" she asked, though she clearly knew the answer. "Yes," I confirmed, trying to keep my voice steady. Victoria cut me off sharply. "You should leave. He won't see you again." I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She was pleased that Alexander had finally distanced himself from me, especially in my current state, sickly and wheelchair-bound. I knew she had always opposed the idea of us mating. Luna Amber, I began, desperate to explain. Grace Winter, Victoria interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade. A she-wolf should have self-respect. I don't want to humiliate you today. Don't force me. Her harshness made my chest tighten painfully. I knew she was furious about Alexander's previous visits to see me. Now that he was ignoring me, my persistence would surely provoke her wrath. But what choice did I have? Luna Amber, just let me see Alexander once. My voice trembled with humility born from desperation. Rest assured, I won't cling to him, I beg you. The pride I once held so dear was gone now, replaced by raw fear. My father Marcus, mother Sarah, and brother Daniel, who once stood firmly behind me, had all turned their backs because of Scarlet Winters. I truly had nowhere else to turn. Victoria's expression hardened. Since you refuse civility, don't blame me for being impolite. Her voice carried such malice that I shivered involuntarily. Throw her far away, she ordered the nearby pack guards with a dismissive wave of her hand. Yes, Luna, they responded in unison. I watched in disbelief as Victoria turned and walked back inside, her proud figure disappearing behind the estate gates I had once dreamed of entering rightfully as Alexander's mate. I had believed his promises that he would make it possible. Now I realized that hope was entirely lost. 2 burly pack guards moved toward me, reaching for my wheelchair. No, don't touch me! You're not allowed to touch me, I cried out desperately, panic rising in my throat. My servant Alara tried to intervene. Please, she's ill. One of the guards shoved her roughly to the ground. Stay out of this. I struggled frantically against their grip, my weak body betraying me. Don't touch me. Who gave you the right to touch me? Let go. Let go. The taller guard laughed coldly. Miss Winter, let me remind you, the winter pack is finished. You're no longer the favored daughter. He leaned closer, his breath hot against my face. You weren't worthy of our alpha heir even when you had the winter pack behind you. Now, even less so. Recognize your place. Excessive entanglement won't do you any good. His words cut deeper than any physical wound. No wolf had ever dared speak to me like this before. The humiliation burned through me, stoking the flames of my hatred. Why did things turn out this way? It's Scarlet Winters, I thought bitterly. Everything is because of Scarlet Winters. Her ruthlessness destroyed not only me, but also her own birth mother, Sarah Winter. The winter pack's collapse was her doing, and I was suffering for it. As they roughly wheeled me away from the estate, hatred consumed me, though I was powerless to act on it. Scarlet Winters, I muttered through gritted teeth, imagining tearing her apart with my bare hands. Moon Goddess, if you give me another chance at life, I will never let Scarlet Winters go. Never. Darkness enveloped me in a comforting embrace as I slept beside Roman. His strong arm pulled me closer, his face nuzzling against my neck. The faint scent of moonlight wine still lingered on his breath, oddly comforting rather than unpleasant. I don't know how long I'd been asleep when an insistent vibration pulled me from my dreams. I'd forgotten to silence my phone completely before sleeping. Groggily, I fumbled for it on the bedside table, careful not to disturb Roman. Hello? I mumbled, my voice thick with sleep. Scarlet, Eric has a high fever. His temperature is really high. Emma's voice came through, frantic and loud. High fever? I repeated blankly, still half asleep and struggling to process why Emma was calling me about this. My mind felt foggy, unable to connect the pieces. What do you mean? Eric has a high fever. Why is Emma calling me? What happened? I was thoroughly disoriented, having completely forgotten that Emma and Eric were now living together in his villa in the European territories. He took fever-reducing herbs, but it's not going down. Emma explained urgently. What should we do? I lay there in silence, my mind working much slower than usual, not just from sleepiness. There seemed to be something important I should remember, but it remained just out of reach. Scarlet? Scarlet. Emma's voice grew increasingly anxious. Give him fever-reducing herbs, I finally replied, the words coming automatically. We did. We gave it to him. It's not working, Emma exclaimed, her frustration evident. I blinked slowly in the darkness. Then give him a few more doses. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I could almost picture Emma's shocked expression. Chapter 251, Calculated Connection. Before Emma could respond, I hung up. The warm comfort of my bed was irresistible, and Roman's steady breathing beside me created a cocoon of safety I wasn't willing to leave. I turned over, wrapping my arms around Roman's lean waist. He stirred slightly, his eyes opening just a fraction before recognizing my scent. He instinctively pulled me closer, his body heat enveloping me like a protective shield. His eyes closed again, content with my presence, and I felt Logan's energy rumble softly through our mate bond. Only someone who had carried a connection as deep as ours for so long could understand this kind of satisfaction. It was like a long-cherished wish finally fulfilled as our mate bond settled more firmly each day. "Roman," I murmured sleepily, nuzzling against his chest. He tightened his embrace, his voice a soothing whisper near my ear. "Be good, little wolf. Sleep." I sighed contentedly, letting myself drift back into dreams, safe in the arms of the man who had always been my shelter. Grace's POV. The cold bit through my bones as I sat in my wheelchair outside the Amber Pack estate. My humiliation was complete. Victoria Amber had not only refused to let me see Alexander, but she'd had me physically thrown out like garbage. Tears of fury and shame stung my eyes. The Winter Pack's once formidable reputation meant nothing now. I was just a sick she-wolf in a wheelchair, pathetically seeking help from wolves who used to fear my family's name. "Miss, let's go back," Alara suggested, her voice tight with poorly concealed annoyance. I could feel her frustration rolling off her in waves. Not only had she been forced to accompany me on this late-night excursion, but she'd also witnessed my humiliating encounter with Luna Victoria. To make matters worse, I knew she hadn't received her wages this month due to the Winter Pack's financial collapse. Her loyalty was hanging by a thread, and I could sense it. The realization that even a servant might abandon me now pushed me over the edge. I snapped, my voice harsh with desperation. "Go back? If you want to go back, go yourself. I have to see Alexander." Even after being physically removed from the estate, I couldn't let go of my desperate hope that Alexander might still help me. He had to. Without him, what did I have left? Alara's posture stiffened, and her eyes flashed dangerously. For the first time, I saw real defiance in her expression. "Fine, then I'll go back," she said firmly, her tone lacking the deference a servant should show. I stared at her in disbelief. "What did you say?" Had things truly fallen so far that even a pack servant dared to speak to me this way? The Grace Winter of just months ago would have had her punished severely for such insolence. Alara stood her ground, no longer intimidated by my status or my anger. "Miss, please get it straight what era we're in now," she said, her voice steady. "Yes, I'm a pack servant, but my loyalty comes with fair treatment and resources. I'm not bound to servitude, especially not to a collapsing pack." Each word was like a knife twisting in my gut. "Do you still think this is like the old pack hierarchies?" she continued boldly. "No resources, and you expect unwavering loyalty?" My breathing grew ragged with fury. I reached out and grabbed her arm, my fingers digging into her flesh. How dare she? How dare this nothing, this nobody speak to me this way? Just as our argument was escalating, headlights swept over us. A sleek black car approached, Alexander's car. I would recognize it anywhere. My heart leaped with desperate hope. This was my chance. I sat in the back seat of my car, staring out at the darkness. The evening had been long and draining, filled with too many revelations about Grace Winter that I didn't want to face. The moonlight wine I'd consumed at the club with Ben and Leo had done little to dull the sharp edges of the truth. If anything, it had made everything clearer, painfully so. As we approached the estate gates, Derek suddenly tensed behind the wheel. "Sir," he said quietly, "it's Miss Winter." I looked up and saw her immediately. Grace Winter in her wheelchair, engaged in what appeared to be a heated confrontation with her servant. Derek accelerated slightly, clearly hoping to drive past and avoid another unpleasant encounter. I could sense his reluctance. He'd already suffered enough from my volatile moods after previous meetings with Grace. But something in me needed this final confrontation. I needed to see her one more time to confirm what I now knew to be true. "Stop the car," I ordered coldly. Derek hesitated, his loyalty to my mother evident in his voice. "The Luna doesn't wish for you to continue getting involved with Miss Winter." "Stop the car," I repeated, my tone leaving no room for argument. Derek pulled over beside Grace. Through the window, I could see her argument with her servant had reached a breaking point. The servant woman looked ready to leave, while Grace was insisting she take her home first. The moment my car stopped, Grace's demeanor transformed completely. She released her servant's arm, and her expression shifted from rage to pitiful vulnerability so quickly it was almost comical. "Alexander," she called out softly, her voice carrying the practiced tremor I once found endearing. Now it just sounded calculated. I lowered the window partway, studying her face. "You came to see me?" Grace nodded meekly, her eyes wide and pleading. I could almost see the wheels turning behind those eyes, assessing my state, noting the late hour of my return. "It's so late. Where did you go? Why are you only back now?" she asked, a hint of possessiveness in her tone. I wasn't in the mood for games. "Get to the point." My abruptness clearly shocked her. She wasn't used to me speaking to her this way. For a moment, genuine hurt flashed across her face before she composed herself again. "My mother's situation. You've seen the Pack news feed, right?" she continued, her lips trembling. I frowned, saying nothing. Of course, I knew about Sarah Winter's arrest. The scandal dominated every conversation in the Northern Territories today. Grace shifted uncomfortably under my cold gaze. "Alexander, help me, please," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Besides you, I really can't think of anyone else now. For the sake of our past connection, help me this one time, all right? Just this once." I could see the calculation behind her words. She knew I wouldn't mark her now, that dream was dead. But she still hoped to use whatever lingering feelings I might have to rescue her adoptive mother. "Our past connection?" I repeated, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Are you talking about the connection you calculated?" Her eyes widened slightly. "The calculation that didn't hesitate to orchestrate a rogue wolf attack on another's life. Is that also called connection?" I continued coldly. Grace's face drained of color. Her pupils constricted as she stared at me, seemingly unable to believe what she was hearing. "You think our connection was something I calculated?" she whispered. "Wasn't it?" I sneered. Her shoulders slumped for a moment before she rallied, her voice rising with indignation. "Just because of the rogue wolf attack, you deny everything between us? Is that fair to me?" I stared at her incredulously. Was she seriously talking about fairness? "You nearly killed her, and now you talk to me about fairness?" I replied, my voice as cold as the Northern Territory winter. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I was seeing a stranger. The Grace Winter I thought I knew had never existed. Why did I do it? Wasn't it because I was afraid of losing everything? She argued, her voice pained and desperate. "Alexander, I grew up in the Winter Pack, calling them mother, father, and brother for over 20 years, only to discover my true heritage. Even you, my promised mate, were supposed to belong to the Winter's biological daughter. I was scared." Her explanation rang hollow. The fear she claimed might have once evoked my sympathy, but now it only disgusted me. "You were scared so you could attempt to kill someone?" I asked flatly. "But Scarlet Winters didn't die, did she?" Grace retorted, her desperation bleeding into rage. "She's alive and well, and she stole everything from me. Is that really fair to me?" I could see it now, the ugly truth beneath her beautiful face. She felt entitled to everything, the Winter Pack's resources, her position, even me. And she was willing to kill to keep it all. "Yes, I did wrong, but she didn't die," she shouted, as if Scarlet's survival somehow lessened her crime. I laughed, a short, humorless sound that seemed to startle even Derek. This was the real Grace Winter, entirely different from the gentle, vulnerable she-wolf I thought I loved. "I can't help you with the Winter Pack's affairs," I said finally. "You brought this upon yourselves through your wicked deeds. You can't blame anyone else." Grace stood speechless, her mouth slightly open but no words coming out. "Drive!" I ordered Derek. Relief washed over his face as he quickly raised the window and started the car before Grace could react further. As we pulled away, I heard her panicked voice calling after me. "Alexander! Alexander, listen to me!" Her cries faded as Derek accelerated, the car putting distance between us with every second. In the rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse of her. A diminished figure in a wheelchair, the cold wind whipping around her as we drove away. Chapter 252, He who commits many wrongs is doomed to fail. Third person's PA. The bitter winter wind howled around Grace Winter as she sat in her wheelchair, watching Alexander Amber's car speed away. His words echoed painfully in her mind. He who commits many wrongs is doomed to fail. Did he truly mean that, no matter what happened to the Winter Pack now, he wouldn't lift a finger to help? The realization felt like a physical blow. How utterly heartless. Not just towards her, but towards the entire Winter Pack. Even if she had done wrong, didn't the years of alliance between their families count for anything? Grace clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white. The pain was intense, burrowing deep into her chest where her weakened wolf usually resided. But where her wolf once whimpered in fear, hatred now grew stronger, taking root in that empty space. "Miss," Alara said coldly, breaking the silence, "we need to leave." Grace didn't respond. Her mind was racing through memories of Alexander's promises, his tender words, his vows to protect her, no matter what. All meaningless now. "He can't do this," she whispered. "After everything we've been to each other." The servant's face remained unsympathetic. "Please, Miss Winter. It's late and freezing." Grace barely heard her. The foundation of her world was crumbling beneath her, and she could feel herself falling into an abyss from which there might be no return. Meanwhile, Alexander Amber entered his family's estate, his face set in hard lines. The grandeur of the main hall did little to improve his mood. His mother, Luna Victoria Amber, was still awake, sitting in the drawing room with a worried expression. Her face was pale, marked by the strain of recent events. Too much had happened to the Amber Pack recently. The sudden appearance of James Amber's illegitimate son had thrown their carefully maintained hierarchy into chaos. Victoria looked up as Alexander entered, sadness filling her eyes. "Alexander," she pleaded, rising from her seat, "if you continue to get entangled with Grace Winter now, I truly don't want to live anymore." The revelation about James having another son before their mating and his dismissive attitude towards that child had wounded Victoria deeply. It was as if her entire mating had been built on lies. Alexander moved to sit beside her on the plush sofa. "From now on, if she comes, just send her away," he stated calmly. Victoria's eyes instantly lit up with hope. Really? She could hardly believe Alexander would say such a thing about Grace, whom he had cherished so deeply. Even after they had supposedly severed ties, Victoria hadn't truly believed it would last. She knew Grace's manipulative ways too well. "What use is such a sickly, silver-poisoned she-wolf if you mark her?" Alexander said, his voice devoid of emotion. Victoria nodded, relief washing over her features. Alexander must truly be disillusioned with Grace. The realization brought her more comfort than she'd felt in weeks. "She came looking for you," Victoria ventured carefully, "probably about Sarah Winter's matter." "I know," Alexander replied. "Then you." "I won't get involved," Alexander stated firmly, his blue eyes cold as ice. Those words were the ultimate reassurance for Victoria. Her son was finally seeing clearly. "Yes, you shouldn't get involved," she agreed quickly. Sarah's now accused of attempted murder against her mate's mistress, and even injuring the pup. Victoria knew that if they got mixed up in this scandal, the Amber Pack's reputation would suffer immensely. As long as Alexander promised not to interfere, she could breathe easy again. Alexander's expression remained impassive, but inside, his thoughts were clear. He truly wouldn't help Grace anymore. Ever since learning the truth about the rogue wolf attack Grace had orchestrated against Scarlet Winters, even hearing Grace's name filled him with disgust. Grace Winter didn't know how she managed to get back to the Winterpack house. The journey was a blur of pain and humiliation. Exhaustion weighed on her as she wheeled herself in around 3:30 a.m. The house was eerily quiet, but light spilled from beneath Daniel Winter's door. As she passed, she heard him on the phone, his voice low and intense. Seeing her through his open door, Daniel abruptly ended his call. Their eyes met, and Grace immediately noticed the difference. His gaze lacked its usual warmth towards her. "Brother," Grace called out, her voice laced with pain. With the Winter Pack falling apart, enveloped in gloom, she felt the most precarious. Once cherished by all, now, with the family fractured and her lack of true blood ties likely known or suspected, she feared losing her footing entirely without Sarah Winter's protection. Daniel's face was grim as he stepped into the hallway. "Where did you go?" "I went to find Alexander," she answered nervously, fidgeting with the blanket on her lap. "What did he say?" Daniel pressed, his eyes narrowing. Didn't say much, Grace replied, unable to repeat Alexander's actual words. They were too suffocating, too final. Hearing this vague answer, Daniel's expression darkened. He understood Alexander's stance perfectly. The one alpha who might have helped the winter pack was now washing his hands of them completely. Get back to your room, Daniel commanded suddenly, his voice filled with hostility, his wolf flickering dangerously in his eyes. Grace flinched at his tone. Brother. Scram, he snarled, the word echoing with finality in the empty hallway. Hearing that word, Grace felt her heart clench tighter. It was over. She was truly finished. Without Sarah in this house, she had no support left. Facing Daniel's palpable anger, she dared not say more and retreated to her room in her wheelchair, each turn of the wheels feeling heavier than the last. Alone in the hallway, Daniel Winter gripped his phone, his hand trembling slightly. The conversation he'd just had confirmed his worst fears. The rogue wolf attack. Grace Winter really had orchestrated it. The incident had nearly killed Scarlet Winters. He remembered visiting Scarlet in the pack healing den daily during that time, bringing her favorite books, sitting with her while she recovered. He had cared for that sister too, his biological sister. Why did things change later? When exactly did he start disliking Scarlet? Was it because she troubled Grace? Because she constantly brought up the attack, refusing to let it go? In their conflicts, he had sided with Grace, the she-wolf he grew up with. And now, knowing the truth, shame washed over him in waves. Far away in the European territories, Emma Chase was growing increasingly desperate. After failing to reach Scarlet Winters, she tried calling Tristan's pack communication number again from the secure landline downstairs. It was the middle of the night, and neither Scarlet nor Tristan could be reached. Eric Blackwood's temperature had climbed to 103 degrees 39.6 degrees Celsius. Letting the fever continue like this, especially with a silver wound, would definitely lead to serious complications. "Come on, answer," Emma muttered as the line rang endlessly. No one picked up. Emma slammed the receiver down in frustration, her hand shaking. She felt utterly frazzled, torn between propriety and necessity. Returning to Eric's room, she tried waking him again. "Wake up! Wake up!" she urged, gently shaking his shoulder. The alpha briefly opened his eyes, glancing at her blearily through fever-hazed amber eyes before falling back asleep. His breathing was rapid, his skin burning to the touch. Emma knew the fever needed to be brought down quickly. Ah! She felt like screaming, running her hands through her hair in frustration. She regretted not going to the Thornpack compound when Scarlet offered. How terrifying could Luna Catherine Thorne really be? Besides, the Thornpack compound was huge. They probably wouldn't have encountered each other often. What could she do now? She thought about calling the local pack emergency healers, but realized her grasp of the specific European pack protocols and language wasn't good enough for effective communication, especially in an emergency. Why did the skills she thought she possessed fail her now? After several frustrating attempts to find an alternative solution, Emma wasted no more time and prepared a basin of lukewarm water for physical cooling. Her hands trembled as she wrung out a soft towel. "I can't believe I'm doing this," she whispered to herself. She started by wiping Eric's face, then his neck. The small surface area didn't yield fast or lasting results. His temperature would dip slightly only to rise again within minutes. Resigned to what she must do, Emma decided to increase the surface area. She pulled back the covers, hesitantly unfastened the alpha's sleep robe, and turned her face away, trying not to look at his powerful body as she blindly wiped his torso with the warm towel. "Oomph," Eric groaned in discomfort. Emma instinctively glanced back, realizing she had touched the sensitive skin near his silver wound dressing. Quickly averting her gaze again, she continued wiping, moving from his upper body towards his lower body. While wiping his lower half, Emma turned her head even further away, ensuring she saw nothing beneath the robe's edge. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but the urgency of the situation overrode her personal discomfort. Suddenly, her wrist was seized by Eric's hand, his grip surprisingly strong despite his fever. Emma froze, her heart stopping. "What are you doing?" Eric's hoarse voice broke the silence. Emma instinctively looked back, meeting his bloodshot eyes. Even now, feverish as he was, His gaze held an intense pressure, his alpha power simmering beneath the surface despite the silver's effects. She swallowed hard. Physical cooling, she stammered. Her gaze drifted downwards, following his line of sight to the hot towel clutched in her hand, currently resting, somewhere quite compromising near the edge of where his robe lay open. Emma, she was utterly, completely dumbstruck. Chapter 253, Morning After and Gossiping Consequences. Third-person POV. Well, the fever-reducing herbs weren't working, so Emma began hesitantly, trying to explain her actions from the previous night. Eric's grip on her wrist suddenly tightened. His amber eyes, bloodshot from the silver-induced fever, stared at her with the predatory intensity that made her breath catch. There was something beast-like in his gaze, a primal energy that even silver poisoning couldn't dampen. Emma swallowed hard, lowering her head. "I tried calling your betas, Tristan and Leo," she whispered, "but none of the calls went through. If only she had reached someone, anyone, she wouldn't have had to spend the night awkwardly sponging down this intimidating alpha's overheated body." The memory made her want to curl up and disappear. Eric slowly released her wrist, his fingers leaving faint marks on her pale skin. The fever seemed to overtake him again, his eyes growing unfocused. Within moments, he had fallen back asleep on the bed. Throughout the night, Emma had sponged him down 3 separate times with lukewarm water before his temperature finally stabilized. By the 3rd time, she'd become almost mechanical in her movements, focusing on the medical necessity rather than the intimacy of the act. The exhaustion had eventually claimed her. She'd only meant to rest her head against the edge of the mattress for a moment, but sleep had pulled her under completely. Morning arrived with the sound of knocking. "Alpha, it's me," Leo Vance's voice called from outside the door. Eric's eyes snapped open at the sound. He sat up, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his injured shoulder. His gaze fell on Emma, slumped awkwardly against his bedside, dead to the world. Her hair resembled a bird's nest, tangled and disheveled from repeatedly nodding off in her makeshift position. "Alpha? Alpha? I'm coming in." Leo called again when no response came. The door swung open before Eric could respond. Leo stepped into the room, freezing immediately when he met Eric's displeased gaze. The alpha's power pressed down subtly but unmistakably, a warning that needed no words. Leo's eyes widened further when he saw Eric carefully pulling the quilt higher to cover Emma's sleeping form beside the bed. Leo's mind went completely blank. What had happened last night? The alpha had a she-wolf sleeping in his room. This was unprecedented. Leo suddenly realized they couldn't just barge into Eric's room anymore, not if he had a potential mate now. But wait, why hadn't Eric answered after he'd knocked for so long? And now the alpha was glaring as if he wanted to rip Leo's throat out. "Alpha, I knocked really hard," Leo gulped, his omega wolf instinctively cowering under the intensity of Eric's displeasure. Eric's thin lips parted. "Scram," he said, his voice dangerously low. Just one cold word that carried the weight of an unmistakable threat. Leo flinched, nodding frantically. "Yes, Alpha. I'll scram. I'll scram right away. I promise to scram far away." He backed out of the room, pulling the door closed softly behind him, careful not to disturb the sleeping she-wolf or further aggravate his alpha. Alone again, Eric turned his attention back to Emma Chase. She was still deeply asleep, completely unaware of the exchange that had just taken place. The basin of water and cooling cloths remained exactly where she had left them after her final attempt to reduce his fever. With unexpected gentleness, Eric slid his arms beneath Emma's small form and lifted her onto the large bed. Despite the movement, she didn't stir at all, testament to her complete exhaustion after caring for him all night. He observed her peaceful face for a moment, small and delicate, almost like it could fit in the palm of his hand. Without thinking, he reached out and pulled the quilt higher, tucking it around her shoulders. Downstairs, Leo Vance paced anxiously in the main living area. When Tristan walked through the front door, Leo practically pounced on him. "Let me tell you," Leo whispered urgently, grabbing Tristan's arm. "There's no doubt that she-wolf Emma Chase, she's the alpha's potential Luna now. She spent the night in his room." Tristan gave Leo a silent, meaningful look, his beta wolf's patience visibly wearing thin. "I'm telling you the truth," Leo insisted, eyes wide with excitement. He was even tucking her in. Tristan sighed, clearly uninterested in Leo's gossip. I have news for you, he said flatly. What news? Leo asked, momentarily distracted. When Aidan Walsh returns this time from his travels with Roman Thorne, he'll likely be sent to the Barren Sands outpost. Leo's jaw dropped in shock. Seriously? Is Alpha Thorne trying to kill him? Everyone knew Aidan Walsh was notoriously fastidious about cleanliness and comfort. The Barren Sands outpost was the most desolate territory under pack control, a harsh, dry place where clean water was scarce and comfort non-existent. Sending him there is like a death sentence for a healer, right? Leo continued, genuinely horrified at the thought. Tristan's eyes narrowed slightly. I feel like Alpha Blackwood might send you there with him. Wait, why would we go there? Leo's voice rose in panic. What mission could we possibly have there? The thought of being sent to such a place filled Leo with dread. He might not be as fussy as Aidan Walsh, but he couldn't imagine surviving the rough living conditions, the barely edible rations, and the cramped communal sleeping dens. Because your mouth is as annoying as Aidan Walsh's, Tristan stated dryly. Leo stared at Tristan, genuinely offended. That's not very friendly. When did I offend you? You didn't offend me, Tristan clarified, but you offended Alpha Blackwood. When? Leo looked utterly confused. How could I not know about something so serious? Seeing Leo's cluelessness, Tristan's expression grew even more exasperated. Wait, are you talking about those minor comments I made? Leo pressed, his voice rising with concern. Is it really that serious? Alpha Thorne nearly drowned Aidan Walsh in the sea for similar minor comments, when he gossiped about him and Miss Winters, Tristan countered flatly. Do you think this is serious? Leo remembered hearing about that punishment. Despite being a skilled healer vital to pack operations, Aidan Walsh had endured Roman Thorne's brutal discipline. He truly had almost drowned. Were Alpha Thorne and Alpha Blackwood really that ruthless about gossip? Was it honestly that serious? The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted Leo's panicked thoughts. Eric Blackwood descended, dressed in a dark blue robe tied loosely at his waist. The garment revealed glimpses of his powerful chest and the intricate pack tattoo that wove over his shoulder, the same shoulder now bandaged beneath the robe. Leo observed Eric's commanding presence with new fear. Even slightly hampered by his injury, the Alpha radiated power. Tristan stood respectfully as Eric approached. Alpha. Eric sat on the sofa, his movements fluid despite the bandage. Is everything taken care of? He asked coldly. Rest assured, Alpha, it's done, Tristan nodded. We left one rogue alive for questioning as instructed. Eric nodded, then shifted his piercing gaze to Leo. The sudden attention startled Leo so badly that he instinctively dropped into a submissive kneel. Alpha Blackwood, I was wrong, Leo cried out. I truly know I was wrong. I don't want to go to the Barren Sands. Please spare me. I'll definitely change. Tristan winced internally at Leo's panicked outburst. I swear on the moon goddess, Leo continued desperately. I'll never dare to spread gossip about you, about the potential Luna, or anything else behind your back again. The word gossip hung heavily in the air. Eric paused, then a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, one that didn't reach his cold amber eyes. Oh, spreading gossip about me behind my back? Eric asked softly, emphasizing the word gossip with dangerous precision. Hearing the weighted tone, Leo froze, staring blankly at Eric. Then, inexplicably, he nodded, his Omega instinct screaming danger even as his mouth moved before his brain could stop it. The air went still, thick with tension. Tristan turned his face away completely, clearly wanting no part of whatever was about to happen. Leo, oblivious to Tristan's frantic mental signals, met Eric's dangerously amused expression and panicked further, nodding again almost imperceptibly. Was all he managed to say, throat tight with fear. Eric leaned back against the sofa cushions, his voice laced with a chilling smile that promised trouble. What gossip were you discussing? Tell me. But Chapter 254, Curiosity Killed the Omega, Third Person's POV. Leo Vance knelt on the floor, his entire body trembling as Alpha Eric Blackwood's cold gaze pinned him in place. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and he could feel his wolf cowering beneath his skin. The silence in the room was deafening. What gossip were you discussing? Tell me. Eric's voice carried that dangerous edge that made even seasoned enforcers quake. Leo's mouth opened and closed several times before words finally tumbled out in a desperate rush. I was just telling Tristan about seeing you with Emma Chase this morning, how she was sleeping in your room and you were tucking her in, and I thought maybe she was going to be your potential Luna because no she-wolf has ever spent the night in your room before, and I was wondering if your condition was fixed. Leo slapped his hand over his mouth, eyes widening in horror at what he'd just admitted. But the words had already escaped, hanging heavily in the air between them. Eric's expression remained unnervingly calm, which somehow made it worse. A calm Eric Blackwood was far more dangerous than an openly angry one. Alpha, I really didn't mean it. I was just curious, Leo added quickly, his voice rising in panic. Across the room, Tristan visibly stiffened. His face reflected pure disbelief at what he was hearing. Was this begging for mercy? It sounded more like Leo was eager to die faster. Silently, Tristan thanked the moon goddess that Leo hadn't implicated him in this disaster. If Leo had dragged him into it, he would have beaten the Omega Wolf senseless later. But hearing Leo utter the word curious made even Tristan realize there was no saving him now. This was the true meaning of disaster comes from the mouth. Eric let out a low chuckle that sent ice through Leo's veins. Curious, he repeated, the single word dripping with menace. Leo instinctively started to nod, but caught himself mid-motion, quickly shaking his head instead. No, I'm not curious. It wasn't me. I didn't. His mind raced frantically. What did I say wrong now? Why does the Alpha's tone feel even more dangerous than before? Forget it. I should just stop talking. This mouth of mine just can't speak properly, Leo thought desperately. But his mouth betrayed him again. Alpha, I'm really not curious. I was just curious if I myself could do it. Tristan looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him. The beta couldn't take it anymore. Alpha, I just remembered there are still some things I haven't interrogated out of that captured rogue. I'll go handle the interrogation now, Tristan blurted out. Without even waiting for Eric's response, Tristan made a swift exit, mentally vowing to stay far away whenever Leo and Eric were together in the future. The risk of becoming collateral damage was simply too high. Leo watched Tristan's escape with naked envy. Alpha, should I go interrogate with him? He asked hopefully, desperate for any excuse to flee this suffocating situation. Eric ignored his question. Instead, he calmly took a cigarette from his pack and lit it, inhaling deeply before asking, "What's your relationship with Aiden Walsh?" Huh? We don't have any relationship, Leo replied, genuinely confused. Why ask about Aiden Walsh all of a sudden? We have absolutely zero connection, he thought anxiously. Eric exhaled a stream of smoke. I think it would be good if you two became brothers. But we aren't, Leo insisted, not understanding where this was going. You can be, Eric stated cryptically. Leo's mind stalled completely. What did can be mean? It's either they are or they aren't. What was the Alpha implying? In a few days, Aiden Walsh is going to the Frostfang Wastes. Go keep him company. You two should get along well, Eric added casually. Leo felt his world shatter into tiny pieces. The Frostfang Wastes? That desolate, frozen hellhole on the edge of their territories? The place where supply runs came once a month, if you were lucky? He suddenly understood Tristan's earlier hasty retreat. Tristan must have foreseen this punishment. That traitor. Becoming brothers is fine, but I don't want to go to the Frostfang Wastes, Leo replied without thinking. He immediately regretted his words. His agreement about the brotherhood clearly showed he hadn't grasped Eric's underlying meaning. This wasn't an offer of friendship, it was a punishment. Eric just looked at him steadily, silently. The weight of his gaze made Leo squirm. Alpha, Leo pleaded softly, hoping his pathetic tone might inspire mercy. Eric paused, taking another drag from his cigarette before asking, "Why did I let you stay by my side back then?" The question seemed genuine, as if Eric was truly puzzled why he had kept such an Omega around. Silver weapon expertise, Leo answered promptly, clinging to his one redeeming value. Eric nodded slowly. I remember now. His tone suggested that only a genuine skill could justify keeping someone so foolish in his inner circle. Emma's pew. Upstairs, Emma Chase was lost in deep sleep when she suddenly rolled over and promptly fell off the bed with a loud thud. She jerked awake, dazed and confused. Ow! she muttered, rubbing her hip. She blinked several times, looking around the unfamiliar room. Where was she? This wasn't her bedroom. The memories of last night slowly filtered back. The silver wound, Eric's fever, the physical cooling. Huh? She murmured, suddenly realizing the patient was gone. The bed was empty. Where did the injured Alpha go? Wounded by silver like that, where could he have run off to? Emma was utterly baffled. She got up, wincing slightly from her fall, and checked her phone. It was past 9 in the morning. Ah, it's so late, she exclaimed. She recalled Eric asking her for some kind of porridge last night, and mentioning side dishes, too. But at this hour, is it still breakfast time? Rubbing her eyes, Emma left Eric's room and went downstairs, yawning widely. Her hair stuck out in all directions, still a complete mess from her restless night. Eric was smoking in the living room, seated comfortably despite his injured shoulder. He watched Emma come downstairs, observing as she scratched her already messy hair, making it look even more like a bird's nest. "Awake?" he asked, his deep voice nearly making her jump out of her skin. Seeing Eric sitting there so casually, memories of the previous night flashed through Emma's mind. Her gaze unconsciously drifted downwards, below his waistline. Maybe Scarlett was right, she thought. I spent so long wiping his body last night, and that part didn't react at all. Eric followed her gaze, and his expression instantly darkened. "What are you looking at?" he snapped. Startled back to reality, Emma quickly shook her head. "Nothing. I wasn't looking at anything." While denying it aloud, she inwardly lamented what a waste it was. Such a great physique and handsome face, but ultimately unable to perform. Scarlett's rumors appeared to be true after all. Seeing the Alpha fall silent, Emma cleared her throat nervously. You shouldn't be smoking right now with your silver wound," she reminded him softly. Eric raised an eyebrow. No one had ever told him that before. Did silver injuries mean no smoking? He didn't know, but he didn't appreciate being lectured by this tiny she-wolf. Emma's stomach chose that moment to rumble loudly. With no cook in the kitchen, she realized she'd have to make something herself, even if Eric wasn't eating. Should I make you something to eat?" she offered, trying to change the subject. Eric just grunted. By the time I finish cooking, it'll probably be lunchtime anyway. Maybe we shouldn't have porridge," Emma continued. Cooking porridge would take too long, and she just wanted something quick and easy. "Then what?" Eric asked, still looking skeptical. "How about noodles?" "Okay," Emma suggested hopefully. That would be fast, and she'd made it for Scarlett before, who claimed it was delicious, or at least edible, mostly edible. Eric disliked noodles but didn't voice his objection. Instead, he studied her for a moment. "Come here," he ordered suddenly. Emma hesitated. What now?" She really didn't want to get any closer to this intimidating Alpha, especially after last night's awkward intimacy. Eric didn't speak again, just watched her quietly with those penetrating amber eyes. Emma sighed inwardly. "All right, when under someone else's roof, you gotta obey," she thought reluctantly. She approached Eric cautiously, feeling increasingly small as she got closer. The height difference between them was significant. She felt like a tiny pup standing before a fully grown alpha wolf. Eric reached out and touched her cheek. Startled by the sudden intimate gesture, Emma instinctively recoiled. "What are you doing?" she squeaked, her heart racing. Why was he acting so ambiguously? They certainly weren't in a relationship that warranted such actions. "There's blood on your face," Eric stated simply. Emma gasped. "Ah, blood? Where from?" Her hand flew to her cheek automatically. Eric clarified. "Probably the nosebleed you got looking at me last night." Emma froze, mortified. "Oh, moon goddess, I didn't even clean that off." She instinctively rubbed her cheek and felt some dried flakes. The blood had indeed dried on her face overnight. Emma's toes curled in embarrassment, wishing she could dig a hole and disappear. What must he think of her now? First the towel incident, then the nosebleed, then the awkward physical cooling, and now this? Seeing her flustered state, Eric's lips curved upward slightly. "Go wash your face first." "Okay, yes," Emma mumbled, turning and practically fleeing toward the bathroom. The Alpha watched her rabbit-like retreat, a spark of amusement lighting up his eyes. Keeping this little she-wolf around might actually be interesting, he mused, momentarily forgetting the rather unpleasant circumstances under which she had arrived by his side. Chapter 255, Poor Appetite and Cold Shoulders, third person's POV. The morning light filtered through the kitchen windows as Emma Chase moved with surprising energy, considering her exhausting night. Her small hands grabbed ingredients from the refrigerator with determination. Noodles, vegetables, and the seasonings Tristan had thoughtfully provided were spread across the counter. "Do you like your noodles spicy?" she called over her shoulder without thinking. When no response came, Emma turned to find Eric Blackwood watching her intently from his position on the sofa. His amber eyes tracked her movements with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. I'll make it mild then," she mumbled, turning back to her task. Eric continued observing her as she bustled about like a busy spinning top, her movements swift yet slightly clumsy. Her small frame barely reached the higher cabinets, forcing her to stretch on tiptoes. From his vantage point on the sofa, positioned perfectly to oversee the kitchen, he could see her struggling. Something stirred within him, an unfamiliar sensation he couldn't quite categorize. It wasn't unpleasant, just new. The way her brow furrowed in concentration as she measured ingredients, the way she hummed tunelessly under her breath, it all seemed bizarrely captivating. "Do you need help?" he asked, surprising himself with the offer. Emma nearly dropped the ladle she was holding. No, you're injured. Please stay seated." The stammered response amused him, though his expression remained impassive. This little she-wolf was certainly different from others he'd encountered. More genuine, less calculating. Perhaps that explained the strange feeling taking root within him. Meanwhile, in Shadow Valley, Roman Thorne awakened with the first light. Unlike most mornings when he'd find Scarlett sprawled across the bed or snuggled against him in some impossible position, today she remained perfectly still in his arms. The unusual stillness caught his attention immediately. His gaze softened as he took in her peaceful features. Even in sleep, there was something subtly different about her, something he couldn't quite identify. Roman pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, carefully extracting himself from beneath her without disturbing her rest. He dressed silently, casting one last fond glance at her sleeping form before slipping out of the room. Downstairs, Wilson was already waiting by the staircase, his posture straight as always. Alpha Thorne, the pack housekeeper, greeted with a respectful nod. "Don't wake her," Roman instructed immediately. "Understood," Wilson replied. Everyone in the pack knew better than to disturb Scarlett's sleep unnecessarily. Her morning temper was legendary, and only Roman seemed immune to it, though even he treaded carefully sometimes. Roman was almost at the door when Wilson hesitantly added, "Alpha, Miss Winters' appetite hasn't been good these past few days. Should we call a pack healer to check on her?" Roman paused, his hand on the doorknob. Poor appetite? Now that Wilson mentioned it, Scarlett hadn't been raiding the kitchen at night recently. Normally, if she felt her dinner portions weren't sufficient, she would inevitably sneak downstairs for midnight snacks. But lately, she hadn't complained of hunger at all. The realization triggered a protective instinct within him. His little wolf, not hungry? Something wasn't right. After a moment's consideration, he said, "Call her best friend, Hazel Walsh. Ask her to come over." With Aiden Walsh currently traveling with him, Hazel would be the next best option. She was a skilled healer in her own right, and Scarlett trusted her. Perhaps she could determine why his mate's appetite had suddenly diminished. "All right, I'll call Miss Walsh shortly," Wilson confirmed. With a nod, Roman departed, his mind already planning how to return to Shadow Valley earlier than scheduled. Half an hour later, Scarlett Winters awoke to an empty bed. She stretched languidly, her hand reaching out instinctively for Roman's warmth, only to find his side of the bed cold. He'd been gone for some time then. She made her way downstairs, hearing Wilson's stern voice before she saw him. "Miss Winters has no desire to see anyone from the Winter Pack. Just turn them away." There was a pause as Wilson listened to the response on the other end of the line. "Yes, just turn them away directly," he repeated firmly before hanging up. Scarlett paused on the stairs, processing what she'd overheard. The Winter Pack? She almost smiled, remembering Emma's prediction. That girl really did have an uncanny knack for foresight. With Sarah Winters' arrest, the pack must be in complete disarray. Just as Emma had predicted, they were now turning to her, probably hoping she'd use her connection to Roman to help them. "Miss Winters," Wilson greeted, noticing her presence. "Where's Roman?" she asked, cutting straight to the point. Even though they were now officially mated, she still referred to him by name when speaking with the staff, a habit formed over years. "Alpha Thorn went out," Wilson informed her. "He specifically instructed not to wake you. When did he leave?" "Half an hour ago." "Not long then. She could still catch him through their mate bond if necessary." "Was that the Winter Pack who called?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Wilson nodded. Yes, it was the alpha heir of the Winter Pack, Daniel Winter. Just as Emma had predicted, she'd have to tell Emma she could open a fortune-telling business with that level of accuracy. Scarlett's phone vibrated in her pocket, interrupting her thoughts. "Hazel," she answered after checking the caller ID. "Scarlett, my car is stuck about 300 meters from the Shadow Valley gate." Hazel Walsh's voice came through, slightly panicked. Scarlett blinked in surprise. "Is there a pothole?" That seemed unlikely given how meticulously Roman maintained everything related to Shadow Valley, especially its access roads. "I drove into the ditch," Hazel admitted sheepishly. Scarlett suppressed a laugh. "Your driving skills. All right, I'll send someone to tow you out right away." "Hurry up, it's freezing," Hazel urged. Looking out the window, Scarlett noticed the ground was covered in fresh snow. The Northern Territories had been unusually cold this year, with far more snowfall than typical. "Okay," she agreed, wondering why Hazel was visiting when they hadn't made plans. Though Roman's earlier instruction to Wilson likely explained it, she turned to Wilson after hanging up. "Quickly send someone to help Hazel Walsh. Her car drove into a ditch, and she can't get out." Wilson nodded and immediately made the necessary arrangements. Scarlett proceeded to the dining room, where pack servants promptly served her usual breakfast favorites, including a bowl of softly cooked millet porridge that smelled delicious. However, as she stared at the food, she realized she had very little appetite. The sight of the steaming porridge should have made her mouth water. Instead, it left her strangely indifferent, a continuation of her recent disinterest in food. Outside Shadow Valley's gates, a stark contrast played out between warmth and cold. While Scarlett remained comfortable within the heated villa, Daniel Winter sat in his car, feeling the biting chill despite the vehicle's heater. His driver, Kevin, returned to the car with a grim expression. "Alpha Hare, Miss Winters refuses to see you," he reported. Daniel's heart sank, though the news wasn't unexpected. Scarlett's unwillingness to meet him was entirely predictable given their history. Her current attitude toward the Winter Pack was exponentially colder than they had ever been toward her. He closed his eyes tightly, desperation creeping into his voice. Did she have any message for me? In that moment, Daniel would have accepted even harsh criticism or outright curses. At least that would indicate some emotional response, some acknowledgement of their existence. But he was mistaken. The Scarlet Winters of today offered him nothing, not even the courtesy of rejection. Her indifference toward the Winter Pack was more devastating than hatred could ever be. Kevin shook his head. No, it wasn't Miss Winters who answered the phone, but the pack housekeeper at Shadow Valley. Just a housekeeper. When had it become so difficult for them, her blood relatives, to even get near her? How had they become such strangers? Daniel closed his eyes again, his entire body radiating instability. The rejection cut deeper than he'd anticipated. "Should we leave?" Kevin asked cautiously, eyeing his alpha hair with concern. Daniel opened his eyes, a sharp determination glinting within them. "Call again. Just say I have something important to discuss." Kevin hesitated, knowing it was likely futile given their history and the current circumstances surrounding Sarah Winter, but he dutifully made the call. Inside the villa, Wilson's phone rang again. When he saw the caller ID, his patience snapped completely. "Next time anyone from the Winter Pack calls, don't even report it," he instructed the pack guard on communications duty before hanging up curtly. He didn't even bother to ask about the supposedly important matter. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. Scarlett overheard Wilson's conversation as she picked at her food. She continued eating quietly, saying nothing, though her lack of response spoke volumes. Clearly, Wilson's handling of the Winter Pack satisfied her. "Miss Winters," Wilson approached hesitantly. Scarlett waved him off with a dismissive gesture. "You don't need to say anything." She knew this reflected Roman Thorne's intentions. not allowing the winter pack to see any glimmer of hope from her side. And she, naturally, had no desire to become their savior. They were blood, but that connection had been severed by their own actions long ago. The winter pack had made their choice years ago. Now they would have to live with the consequences. Chapter 256, A Flurry of Calls and a Snowy Predicament. Scarlett's POV. I watched Wilson hang up the phone after dismissing the winter pack's call. His expression was a mixture of protectiveness and satisfaction as he turned to face me. "Miss Winters, I've instructed the communications team to block any further calls from the winter pack," he said. I nodded silently, taking another small bite of my millet porridge. In truth, I couldn't care less about the winter pack's desperation. Blood ties meant nothing when compared to the genuine love and protection I'd received from the Thorn Pack all these years. "Thank you, Wilson," I said simply. The relief on his face was evident. He probably expected me to feel conflicted about turning away my biological family. Little did he know that Roman and Luna Catherine were my real family, the ones who had raised me, protected me, loved me. My phone vibrated again. This time it was Natalie Thorne. I instantly felt warmer seeing her name. "Natalie," I answered, a genuine smile crossing my face. "Scarlett, when are you coming back to the Eastern Territories?" Her voice was bright and enthusiastic as always. "Today, actually," I replied, pushing away my barely touched breakfast. "Really? That's perfect." I could practically hear her clapping her hands. "You need to come back quickly to try on the mating ceremony attire I designed. It's absolutely stunning, even if I say so myself." I blinked in surprise. "You designed it? I didn't know you were into fashion design." Natalie laughed. "There's a lot you don't know about me, dear sister. I might be focused on healing arts, but I have other talents too." Her mention of the mating ceremony attire reminded me of another time, not too long ago, when I was supposed to try on a similar garment for my planned marking ceremony with Alexander Amber. I hadn't been excited about the ceremony itself, but I'd been looking forward to wearing a design from that particular pack boutique because I knew they carried some of Natalie's early work. "I'm glad the ceremonial robe I damaged back then wasn't one of yours," I admitted, recalling how I'd accidentally torn the expensive fabric during a fitting. "Oh, I heard about that incident," Natalie chuckled. "Don't worry. This one is made specifically for you, with plenty of room for movement." She knew me too well. "I'll return with Roman," I said firmly. "We've been separated enough recently." "Oh my, listen to you saying just Roman now," Natalie teased. "Not Alpha Thorn or my protector anymore." My cheeks warmed. "I mean, I'll be wherever Roman is." "So smooth with Roman now," she continued teasing. "The mating must be going well." "Natalie," I protested, feeling the blush spread across my face. "Can we change the subject?" Fine, she relented, but I could still hear the smile in her voice. "But tell me honestly, are you two really mated now? Because I'll muzzle any wolf who tries to take you away from him." Her fierce protectiveness startled me. "Even Roman?" I teased back, trying to regain some footing in this conversation. "I wouldn't dare," Natalie gasped, then laughed. "He's terrifying when it comes to you. You know that, right?" "I'm aware," I said, thinking of how protective Roman had always been. After we finished chatting and hung up, a thought suddenly struck me. If Natalie was already back in the Eastern Territories, that meant she had left Shadow Valley. When had she gone? And more importantly, how had Darian Morrison dared to return to the European territories after Roman had exiled him? The thought sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the snow outside. Before I could dwell on it further, my phone rang again. Hazel. "Hazel? What's wrong?" I answered, hearing her panicked breathing. "Scarlett, another vehicle," she exclaimed. "The recovery truck they sent also slid into the ditch." "What? How is that possible?" I asked, genuinely confused. "The roads are worse than they look," Hazel explained. "There's black ice everywhere, and this particular ditch is over 6 feet deep. We're both stuck now." I couldn't help but laugh despite the seriousness of the situation. "Over 6 feet? How did you manage that?" "It's not funny," Hazel protested, though I could hear a hint of embarrassment in her voice. "What should we do now?" "Let's call the territory's Roadside Assistance Corps," I suggested. "They have specialized equipment for situations like this." "Yes, good idea," Hazel agreed, sounding relieved to have a plan. Are you cold? I can come pick you up while they work on getting the vehicles out, I offered, genuinely concerned about her being stranded in this weather. Be careful if you do, she cautioned. The roads are treacherous. I smiled confidently. I'm an excellent driver, especially in bad conditions. It wasn't an empty boast. I'd received extensive combat driving training with the Thornpack Enforcers. Roman had insisted I learn every possible survival skill, including how to handle a vehicle in dangerous situations. I'll ask Wilson to arrange a car, I told her before hanging up. Wilson approached as I put my phone away. Miss Winters, is there a problem? Yes, I need a car to pick up Hazel. The recovery truck is now stuck in the same ditch as her car. Wilson's face immediately tensed. I'm afraid I can't allow you to drive in these conditions, Miss Winters. I frowned. And why not? Alpha Thorn's standing orders, Wilson replied smoothly. In such weather, you are not to drive yourself. I'll send one of our specially trained drivers instead. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. Specially trained? After what happened to Hazel and your recovery truck, I'm not convinced. Wilson's expression remained professional, though I detected a hint of amusement. I assure you, Miss Winters, our drivers are specifically trained for these conditions. The recovery truck driver may have been overeager. I didn't believe him, but before I could argue further, I felt the familiar warmth of Roman's presence in my mind. Don't even think about driving in this weather, little wolf, his voice echoed through our mate bond. I mentally rolled my eyes. These roads are easy for me. No, Roman replied firmly, his mental voice leaving no room for argument. Then his tone softened. I'll bring you something special when I return. Like the chestnut cake from last night, I reminded him. The one I didn't get to eat because I was taking care of you after you drank too much moonlight wine? I felt his mental chuckle. Something different today. I promise you'll like it. Despite myself, I smiled. Even after all these years, Roman still brought me treats whenever he went out on pack business, just like when I was a pup. Some things never changed, and for that, I was grateful. Fine, I conceded, but hurry back. With a sigh, I turned to Wilson. All right, send your specially trained driver, but make it quick. Hazel's freezing out there. Wilson nodded and quickly left to make the arrangements, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the snow falling steadily outside the window. Chapter 257, A Cold Shoulder. I traced the frosty patterns forming on the window while waiting for updates about Hazel's rescue. The snow continued to fall heavily outside, blanketing everything in white. My phone buzzed, and I quickly snatched it up. Hazel? Any news? I asked, hoping the driver had reached her by now. Not yet, she replied, her teeth chattering audibly. How much longer do you think it'll take? Wilson said the driver should be there any minute, I assured her, feeling guilty that I wasn't the one rescuing her myself. I'm sorry I can't come get you myself. Too dangerous for you to drive? Hazel asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. I sighed dramatically. Apparently, according to my overprotective mate, I'm not allowed to drive in this weather. Really? But aren't you trained in all kinds of combat driving? Hazel asked, knowing full well my capabilities. I've seen you handle vehicles in conditions much worse than this. Tell that to Roman, I replied with a small laugh. He contacted me through our mate bond specifically to forbid it. Well, Hazel's voice softened. I can't blame him. He's just protecting his mate. I rolled my eyes, though she couldn't see it. I've been driving in Northern Territory snow since I was 17. This is nothing. He loves you, Hazel said simply. That's what mates do. They protect each other, sometimes beyond what's strictly necessary. Her words made me pause. She was right, of course. Roman's protectiveness, while occasionally frustrating, came from a place of deep love. It had always been that way, even long before our mating. I gazed out at the thick snow covering the landscape. The pristine whiteness stretched as far as I could see, beautiful, but undeniably treacherous. By the way, I began, curiosity finally getting the better of me, what was the real purpose of your visit today? I know Roman probably sent for you, but... The line suddenly went dead. Hazel? I pulled the phone away from my ear and looked at the screen. Call ended. Great. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. Reception in this weather was notoriously unreliable, especially in the ditch where she was stranded. I just hoped the driver would reach her soon. The heater in my car struggled against the biting cold as I waited outside Shadow Valley's gates. Kevin, my driver, returned to the car with the same defeated expression he'd worn the last 3 times he'd approached the guards. "Any luck?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Kevin shook his head, brushing snow from his shoulders as he settled back into the driver's seat. "The pack guards won't even notify Miss Winters of our presence anymore. They said we should stop wasting their time." I clenched my fist in frustration. "This is ridiculous. She's my sister." "They take their orders from Alpha Thorn, sir," Kevin reminded me gently. "And apparently those orders are to keep the Winter Pack away from Miss Winters." I stared out at the imposing gates of Shadow Valley. They seemed to mock me with their solidity, their impenetrability. We'd tried calling Scarlett's personal number countless times, but she either wasn't answering or had blocked our calls entirely. Our only remaining option had been to come in person, but even that was proving futile. The pack housekeeper, Wilson, had already made it clear that Scarlett would not see us. "How did we get here?" I muttered, more to myself than to Kevin. How indeed. The Winter Pack stood on the brink of collapse. Our assets were being systematically destroyed or taken over. Our pack members were leaving in droves, seeking stability elsewhere. And all of it might have been avoided if we'd recognized what was right in front of us all along. We never realized the extent of Scarlett's connection to the Thorn Pack. We never understood the true power wielded by her mate, Roman Thorn, the Shadow King himself. Instead, we had favored Grace, believing her to be the key to our future through her potential mating with Alexander Amber. How foolish we had been. "Should we leave Alpha Air?" Kevin asked hesitantly. "Perhaps try again tomorrow?" I shook my head firmly. "And what, our problems will magically disappear overnight?" I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Ever since Scarlett made it clear she's done with us, we've barely been able to get near her. Kevin fell silent, understanding the gravity of our situation. The truth was painfully clear. Without Scarlett's intervention, or rather, without Roman Thorn's favor through her, the Winter Pack was finished. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of treating her as secondary to Grace, we were now desperately seeking her help. But why would she help us now? What reason had we given her to care about our fate? I spotted Daniel Winter's car as I approached Shadow Valley's gates. Perfect. This day just kept getting better. My driver slowed our sleek black vehicle alongside his, and I rolled down my window, enjoying the flash of recognition and subsequent dread that crossed Daniel's face when he saw me. Well, if it isn't the alpha heir of the Winter Pack," I called out, unable to resist twisting the knife. "Having to announce your visit to your own dear sister? How the mighty have fallen." Daniel's face darkened with anger, exactly the reaction I was hoping for. I turned away from him, directing my attention to the pack guard. "Nathan Blake here to see Miss Winters. Please let her know I've arrived." The guard nodded respectfully. "Of course, Alpha Blake. I'll notify her immediately." I turned back to Daniel with a smirk. "See? That's how it's done." "What are you doing here, Blake?" Daniel growled, his hands gripping his steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "That's really none of your business, is it?" I replied casually. "Though I must say I'm surprised to see you. I thought you'd be avoiding me after what you and your pack did." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Haven't you and Thorn done enough? The Winter Pack has lost almost everything already." "Oh," I feigned surprise. "Is that so? How unfortunate." I couldn't help but add, "Though it does take some of the fun out of it. I was just getting started with my revenge." "Your revenge?" Daniel spat. "For what? That incident with Jessica Miller at the mall? That was nothing." "Nothing to you, perhaps," I replied, my voice hardening slightly, "but not to Jessica, and certainly not to me." The guard returned before Daniel could respond. "Alpha Blake, you're cleared to enter. Please follow the main drive to the villa." "Thank you," I said, then turned back to Daniel. "Well, it seems your sister is willing to see me at least. Better luck next time, Winter." I rolled up my window as my car pulled forward, but not before catching Daniel's expression of pure fury. It was almost comical how easily the once proud Winter Pack had crumbled under pressure. As we passed through the gates, I glanced in my rearview mirror to see Daniel's car still sitting there, a visual representation of his helplessness. It seemed clear that Scarlet Winters no longer considered her biological brother worthy of her time. Not that I could blame her. Daniel's POV. I watched Nathan Blake's car disappear up the long driveway, rage burning in my chest. First, Roman Thorne systematically dismantled our pack's assets. Then Blake swooped in to pick at whatever remained, and now I couldn't even speak to my own sister. Alpha Air? Kevin's voice broke through my thoughts. What should we do now? I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Any initial guilt I might have felt towards Scarlet had completely evaporated. This wasn't about repentance anymore. This was about survival. We need to see my mother, I said firmly. Kevin nodded in understanding. Sarah Winter, my mother, was being held in pack detention following her assault on Jennifer Moore, my father's mistress. The attack had been brutal, with Jennifer seriously injured and one of the twins hurt as well. I had been denied access to see her multiple times now. The detention facility claimed it was for her own protection as well as others, but I suspected Roman Thorne's influence there as well. The only way we're going to see her is if Scarlet intervenes, I admitted reluctantly, or rather, if Roman Thorne gives permission. The realization was bitter. After everything, after all the years of favoring Grace over Scarlet, of dismissing her concerns and claims, we now needed her help more than ever. Let's go, I said finally, seeing no point in remaining outside these gates. We'll try another approach. As Kevin started the car, I cast one last look at Shadow Valley. Somewhere inside those walls, my biological sister was warm and safe, protected by one of the most powerful alphas in all the territories. And she couldn't care less about what happened to us. I couldn't even blame her. Scarlet's POV. Inside the warm villa, I wrapped myself tighter in the soft blanket a thoughtful pack servant had brought me. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across the room. Despite the warmth, I couldn't shake my concern for Hazel still stranded in the snow. Suddenly, I felt the familiar, comforting presence of Roman in my mind, his thoughts enveloping me like a warm embrace. I'm on my way back, his voice echoed in my head. Did Hazel examine you yet? I blinked in surprise. Examine me? For what? Your appetite, Roman replied, a hint of concern coloring his thoughts. Wilson mentioned you haven't been eating much lately. So that's why she was coming. Roman had indeed sent for her, worried about my recent lack of interest in food. I should have known. Nothing escaped his notice, especially when it came to my well-being. She hasn't arrived yet, I informed him. Her car went into a ditch near the entrance. I tried to go get her myself, but someone forbade me from driving in the snow. I felt his amusement through our bond. That someone sounds very wise. That someone is overprotective, I countered, though I couldn't keep the affection from my thoughts. When it comes to you, little wolf, there's no such thing as overprotective. My heart warmed at his words. Even after all these years, his constant care for me never wavered. Sometimes it was frustrating, like today when he wouldn't let me drive in conditions I was perfectly capable of handling. But most of the time, like now, it just made me feel incredibly loved. Hurry home, I told him. Chapter 258, Favor. Oh, I won't talk anymore, I said. You should come back early. I ended our mental connection, my heart still fluttering slightly from his concern. Even after all these years, his protectiveness never failed to affect me. Almost immediately, my phone rang. Hazel's name flashed on the screen. Scarlet, where exactly are you uncomfortable? Her voice came through urgently. Tell me the symptoms. I'll have someone send healing herbs over. I furrowed my brow in confusion. What about you? Did they pull the car out? I have something urgent to attend to here, so I won't be coming over, she replied hastily. The urgency in her voice told me this wasn't just an excuse. Something important must have come up. I'm fine. Don't worry about me, I reassured her quickly. Didn't Roman say you weren't feeling well? No, my mate was just worrying needlessly, I explained. Honestly, I attributed my recent lack of appetite to simply having eaten too much rich food lately. My body probably needed a break from all the decadence of Shadow Valley's kitchen. Calling a healer for something so minor seemed completely excessive. Hazel was silent for a moment, and I could almost picture her expression of disbelief. All right then, I'll head off, she finally said, clearly deciding against coming to Shadow Valley now that I'd claimed to be fine. That after exchanging a few more pleasantries, we ended the call. I set my phone down on the coffee table, only for Wilson to appear almost immediately in the doorway. "Miss Winters, Alpha Blake is here," he announced formally. I raised an eyebrow, curious about this unexpected visit. What could Nathan Blake want now? I thought we'd clarified everything between our packs during our previous interactions. "Let him in," I instructed calmly. Wilson nodded and retreated to fetch our visitor. Moments later, Nathan Blake strode into the living room, his confident demeanor faltering slightly when he scanned the room. "Your mate isn't here?" he asked, his eyes darting around as if expecting Roman to materialize from the shadows. I tilted my head, studying his sudden nervousness. "Didn't you come to see me? What does it matter if my mate is here?" "It matters," Nathan insisted, his voice tight. "It matters a great deal." I could see the tension in his shoulders. Everyone knew how possessive Roman was, especially when it came to me. I found Nathan's anxiety almost amusing. "If I had known he wasn't here earlier, I wouldn't have come," he admitted candidly, his usual charm replaced with evident unease. I raised an eyebrow. "What's the big deal?" "It's a huge deal," Nathan repeated earnestly. Was he really that afraid to visit me when Roman wasn't home? The Shadow King's reputation was formidable, certainly, but Nathan's caution seemed almost excessive. "Then perhaps you should leave now?" I suggested playfully. Nathan looked genuinely taken aback. "Leave? Now? But I've already come all this way, through the snow and ice. It was a difficult journey." He gestured toward the window, where thick snowflakes continued to swirl against the glass. The territory roads were indeed treacherous today. "I wouldn't have made the trip if this wasn't important," he added gravely. His serious tone caught my attention. Roman's systematic dismantling of the Winter Pack and Amber Pack assets had sent ripples through the Northern Territories. Everyone had witnessed what happened to those who crossed the Shadow King. "What is it you want?" I asked directly, suspecting this might be about pack politics again. "Let me be clear. Using pack leverage is definitely not an option. Besides, you've already secured the mining rights deal, the one the entire Northern Territories wanted. What leverage could you possibly need?" The Amber Pack had fought tooth and claw for those mining rights and failed spectacularly. What more could Nathan Blake possibly want? The mention of pack leverage made Nathan visibly uncomfortable. I saw him wince, likely remembering the previous misunderstanding involving the mistakenly delivered pack tribute that almost jeopardized his resource deal with Roman. He quickly shook his head. "No, I'm not looking for any leverage." "Then what?" I pressed, fixing him with a direct stare. "I came to ask about the conflict with Ayla Quinn," Nathan stated plainly. "Was Jessica Miller involved?" I stared at him, momentarily stunned by the simplicity of his question. I glanced outside at the thick snow piling up against the windows, then back at Nathan. "You came all this way, in this weather, just for that?" I asked incredulously. "Of course," he affirmed, looking completely serious. I couldn't help but find his level of concern somewhat excessive. "You could have just called me." "I don't have your number," Nathan admitted sheepishly. I realized he was right. Very few wolves had my current secure pack number, especially someone I wasn't particularly close to like Nathan Blake. "Then you could have called my mate," I suggested logically. The moment the words left my mouth, Nathan's expression transformed into one of utter horror. "Are you joking?" he asked, his voice rising slightly. "Call Roman Thorne directly about this?" I could see the fear in his eyes. Calling Roman about such a matter could easily be misconstrued, potentially drawing my mate's unwanted attention. Nathan clearly wasn't foolish enough to walk straight into Roman's line of fire. I gave him a questioning look, slightly amused by his strong reaction. Nathan pressed on, clearly desperate to get to the point of his visit. "Just tell me, was Jessica Miller involved? If she was, I absolutely won't let her off easy when I get back." "You really are her dear brother," I remarked dryly, noting the harshness in his tone. "Of course I'm her brother. Why else would I apply such strict pack discipline?" Nathan emphasized the word discipline with particular intensity. He looked intently at me, his eyes searching mine. "So, was she involved?" I nodded. "Yes, she was involved." Nathan froze, his face draining of color. "Really involved." I could see the shock radiating through him. That stubborn she-wolf, Jessica, had apparently dared to lie to him. "Did she hit you?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. I could practically see the panic setting in. He'd likely warned Jessica repeatedly that I was precious to Roman and that she must suppress any lingering resentment from past incidents involving Daniel Winter. "She didn't hit me," I clarified quickly. "She helped me hold Ayla Quinn. Ayla got beaten quite badly." Nathan's expression shifted from fear to utter confusion. He stared at me, his mouth working silently for a moment. "What did you say? She helped you hold Ayla Quinn?" I nodded again. "Yes, she held on to Ayla Quinn really tightly at the time." Nathan looked completely bewildered, as if he couldn't process what I was saying. So Jessica and I had teamed up against Ayla Quinn? This outcome was clearly not what he'd expected at all. Just as he seemed about to formulate another question, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. A powerful, familiar presence entered, and I turned to see Roman standing in the doorway, his expression dark as thunderclouds. "Alpha Blake actually has the leisure to visit Shadow Valley?" Roman's voice was deceptively soft, but laced with unmistakable displeasure. "Why didn't you call me first?" His displeased Alpha gaze met Nathan's, and I saw the younger Alpha practically shrink under the intensity. Nathan clearly realized that Roman returning unexpectedly while he was alone with me was entirely different, and far worse, than arriving while Roman was already present. Feeling my mate's presence, I stood up immediately and walked toward him, a warm smile replacing my previous cool composure. The tension I hadn't even realized I was carrying seemed to melt away. "You're back so quickly?" I asked, surprised given the treacherous road conditions. Roman's expression softened as he looked at me. He reached out and gently ruffled my auburn hair, his powerful aura shifting to one of tenderness. "Hunterstone brought the food in," he said. "Go take a look." My curiosity was instantly piqued. "What kind of food?" "You'll know when you see it," he replied, his deep voice filled with spoiling affection. I glanced back at Nathan, who seemed momentarily stunned by the transformation in Roman, this boundless gentleness reserved solely for me, contrasting sharply with the chilling indifference he showed to the rest of the world. The extremes of Roman Thorn, ruthless alpha king to all others, overwhelmingly tender mate to me alone. Chapter 259, Checking on Her. I watched as Roman Thorn turned to Scarlet Winters, his demeanor softening momentarily. It was clear he wanted to speak with me alone, and I held my breath, silently praying that Scarlet wouldn't leave. "Scarlet, go see what Hunter brought," Roman said, his tone gentle yet commanding. My heart sank. With her gone, I'd be at the mercy of the Shadow King's infamous temper. But to my growing dismay, Scarlet nodded immediately. "I'll go then," she said, her voice light and obedient. "Okay, be good," Roman replied, pinching her cheek with surprising tenderness. I watched in amazement as she turned and left without question or protest. This was the same fierce she-wolf who had famously broken her engagement with Alexander Amber, the one who commanded respect throughout the Northern Territories with her sharp tongue and unwavering resolve. Her complete transformation in Roman's presence was startling. If not for witnessing her previous interactions with Alexander Amber firsthand, I might have doubted she was the same person. Looking at her docile behavior with Roman, I could only conclude that Alexander Amber was both unlucky and blind. He had failed to recognize who was truly valuable, instead choosing Grace Winter, that contemptible she-wolf who had nearly destroyed multiple packs with her machinations. As Scarlet disappeared down the hallway, the atmosphere in the room instantly chilled by several degrees. Roman Thorn walked to a nearby sofa and sat down, his powerful frame relaxed, but his eyes sharp and calculating. "Alpha King," I began tentatively, feeling my throat constrict slightly under his gaze. Roman shot me a cold glance. "Haven't you already finalized the territory resource agreements? Why are you still looking for her?" My heart skipped a beat. His perception mirrored Scarlet's earlier assumption perfectly. Truly raised in the same pack, their thought patterns aligned seamlessly. Leaving Roman with the impression that I was constantly trying to use connections for leverage wasn't good for my pack's future. It's not about the resource agreements," I quickly clarified, forcing a dry laugh that sounded hollow even to my ears. I knew my previous attempts to approach Scarlet had indeed been about seeking leverage through her relationship with Roman. But this time was different. It's really not about the agreements. I won't look for Miss Winters regarding territory matters again, I insisted, trying desperately to clear away the bad impression. Roman raised an eyebrow skeptically. Oh, he took out a cigarette, lit it with practiced ease, and took a long drag. The smoke curled around his impassive face as he continued staring at me, his ice-blue eyes never warming. I swallowed hard, fighting the instinct to back away. Even seated casually, Roman Thorne's presence filled the room with an almost palpable authority. It's about the incident at the mall earlier, I explained, keeping my voice steady through sheer force of will. I was worried Jessica Miller might have hurt Miss Winters, so I came personally to check. Roman's expression didn't change. For this kind of thing, you could have called me first. I groaned inwardly. I had come precisely because I didn't dare call him directly. The thought of initiating contact with the Shadow King over what might be nothing had seemed far more dangerous than a personal visit. Thankfully, Scarlett's account largely matched what Jessica had told me. I hadn't fully believed my sister initially, knowing her past animosity towards Scarlett because of her friendship with Grace Winter. That uncertainty had driven me to verify things myself. I was mainly worried you'd harm innocent bystanders, I mumbled, then quickly corrected myself when I saw his expression darken. No, I was just worried Miss Winters got hurt. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Despite being a respected alpha in the Northern Territories for years and having dealt with powerful wolves throughout my career, the aura emanating from Roman Thorne genuinely intimidated me. Perhaps it was because he was the Shadow King of the Eastern Territories, an alpha whose reputation involved ruthless efficiency and, if rumors were true, considerable bloodshed. Whatever the reason, this was not someone to provoke. If it weren't for the irreplaceable mining resources my pack needed, I would never have risked getting involved with him or his interests. Figured it out? Roman asked curtly, interrupting my spiraling thoughts. Yes, it's clear, I nodded quickly, relief washing over me. Jessica hadn't actually harmed Scarlett. My sister had been surprisingly perceptive this time. If she had acted impulsively and helped Ayla Quinn attack Scarlett, the consequences would have been catastrophic. Seeing what Roman had done to the Quinn family pack after their failed attempt on Scarlett, I had been terrified these past few days. Scarlett's POV. The pastries looked absolutely delightful, arranged on a silver tray in the kitchen. Hunter Stone stood nearby, his usually stern expression softened slightly as he watched me examine the treats. Alpha Thorne thought the shapes were very cute, so he brought them for you, Hunter explained, gesturing to the array of animal-shaped pastries. I picked up one shaped like a small wolf and bit into it. The delicate flavor exploded across my tongue, sweet but not overpowering, with subtle hints of berries. This little wolf-shaped one is delicious, I'd savoring the taste. Hunter nodded. The rabbit-shaped one is even better. Alpha Thorne ate several. Really? I picked up a rabbit-shaped pastry, examining its detailed ears and tiny tail before taking a bite. The flavor was indeed even better, light, airy, with a creamy filling that melted in my mouth. It was unlike anything I'd tasted before in the Northern Territories. Wow! So yummy! I murmured, completely captivated by the taste. I was already reaching for another when I sensed Roman's presence behind me. Turning around with my cheeks still full of pastry, I mumbled through my mouthful. Roman, this is so delicious. Where did you buy it? I asked, not caring about proper etiquette in my excitement. I'd been in the Northern Territories for so long, but hadn't known such amazing pastries existed here. His eyes softened as he looked at me, that special expression he reserved only for me. If you like them, have Hunter arrange for more later to take back to the Eastern Territories. My eyes widened at his words. Are we really going back today? Roman nodded firmly. Yes, tonight's flight. Relief washed over me. Finally, no more delays, no more dealing with the Winter Pack and their endless drama. I was worried about Emma Chase being alone with Eric Blackwood for too long. My friend was clearly terrified of him, though I knew he would never actually harm her. Darian Morrison and Natalie Thorne seemed to have both returned to the European territories, I said, remembering what I'd meant to tell him earlier. I'd planned to mention it last night, but Roman had returned intoxicated from moonlight wine, and this morning he'd left before I woke. Roman frowned slightly. They called you? Yes, I confirmed, recalling Darian's arrogant tone during our call. His persistent claim about being my promised mate based on some casual comment from my adoptive father years ago was both ridiculous and infuriating. Isn't Natalie in the European neutral zone? With Eric Blackwood there? I wondered aloud. Logically, Natalie shouldn't have returned to the Eastern Territories so quickly. Roman didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out and effortlessly pulled me onto his lap. He picked up another pastry, this one shaped like a fox, and offered it to me. I don't want any more. I'm full, I refused, shaking my head despite how delicious they were. Eating so little now? Roman remarked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp with observation. His comment made me pause and consider. Why was I eating so little lately? I used to have a much bigger appetite. Previously, I would have finished everything on the tray, but now I'd eaten less than a third and felt completely satisfied. I also realized I hadn't had my usual late-night snacks for several nights. Roman had always teased me about my midnight kitchen raids, but they'd stopped without me even noticing. I don't know what's wrong recently. I can't eat much, I said thoughtfully, trying to pinpoint when my appetite had changed. Has Hazel Walsh come to check on you? Roman asked, his concern evident in his voice. Not yet, I replied. She had something to do earlier and left without coming in. Hazel had seemed unusually busy lately, though I hadn't given it much thought until now. Why did you come back so early? I asked, changing the subject. He had just contacted me through our bond not long ago, then returned almost immediately afterward. Finished my pack business, so I came back, Roman replied vaguely, not elaborating further. I suspected there was more to it, but I didn't press. Instead, I asked about another matter that had been on my mind. Did you see Daniel Winter at the entrance, too? I nodded toward the gate, thinking of my biological brother waiting futilely outside. Yes, I saw him, Roman confirmed, his expression neutral. Unlike his approach with Alexander Amber, who had received direct confrontations, Roman had chosen a colder method for the Winter family. Stripped of everything, letting them suffer his complete indifference was perhaps a more effective torment. With the freezing weather outside, forcing Daniel to wait was enough to make him miserable. I snuggled against Roman's chest, breathing in his familiar scent. After returning to the Eastern Territories, I'm never coming back to this Northern Territory again. Sad? Roman gently pinched my ear, his touch feather light. Not sad, I corrected, searching for the right word. Just feel disgusted. Truly disgusted. Although I'd seen plenty of pack politics and manipulation in the Eastern Territories, the sheer baseness of the Winter family reached new levels. Sarah Winter's drastic change upon learning my true identity and their subsequent vitriol when they couldn't exploit my connection to the Thorn Pack had left me with nothing but revulsion. Disgusted, Roman echoed, studying my face. I affirmed, thinking of their two-faced nature and selfish cruelty. Roman smiled slightly, tilted my chin up with his finger, and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss deepened rapidly, his possessiveness evident in every touch. After a while, he finally released me, his eyes darker than before. When Hazel Walsh arrives later, have her take a look at what's going on with you. I nodded. Chapter 260, A Culinary Disaster. I stared in horror at the pot of noodles I'd just cooked. What had started as a simple lunch had transformed into an unidentifiable mass that could barely be called food. The thick, congealed substance stared back at me mockingly. An hour and a half had passed since I'd begun cooking, and this disaster was my second attempt. I'd secretly disposed of the first catastrophe down the drain when Eric wasn't looking. How had this happened? I'd made noodles for Scarlett before, and she'd praised them. Well, kind of. She ate them at least. I poked at the sticky mess with a spoon. The noodles had fused together into some kind of doughy mass. Maybe I hadn't used enough water, or too much flour. The tutorial had seemed so straightforward. Eric's deep voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. Is it ready? I jumped, nearly dropping the spoon. Eric had finished his phone call and was now looking directly at me from the living room, his amber eyes intense as always. My gaze darted between his intimidating figure and the culinary disaster in front of me. Yes, it's ready, I said with forced confidence. It had to be ready. We'd been waiting forever, and my own stomach was growling ferociously. Hesitantly, I scooped a tiny portion onto my spoon and raised it to my lips. The moment it touched my tongue, I nearly gagged. The saltiness was overwhelming. The noodles were simultaneously undercooked and mushy, a paradox I didn't think was possible in cooking. Had I added salt twice? I must have. "Let's eat then," Eric said, tossing his phone onto the coffee table and moving toward the dining area. I froze, panic rising in my chest. How could I serve this to anyone, let alone an alpha like Eric Blackwood? He'd already been injured, and now I was going to poison him with my cooking? But looking at his cool, expectant expression, I couldn't bring myself to admit failure. "Okay, right away," I mumbled, my hands trembling as I dished out 2 portions. I'd somehow made enough to feed 5 wolves, not just the 2 of us. The massive quantity only highlighted my incompetence. I placed a bowl in front of Eric and then sat across from him with my own portion, keeping my eyes firmly fixed on my food. I couldn't bear to watch his reaction. The silence stretched between us. From the lack of sounds, I could tell Eric hadn't even attempted to taste it yet. Gathering my courage, I forced a spoonful into my mouth, fighting every instinct to spit it out. The salt hit my taste buds like a punch, but I managed to swallow. "Delicious," I choked out, looking up with what I hoped was a convincing smile. Eric's eyebrow arched skeptically. "Delicious?" he repeated, glancing down at his untouched bowl. I nodded vigorously. "Yes, delicious. It just doesn't look very appealing." That was the understatement of the century. The noodles weren't noodles anymore. They weren't even a proper dish. They'd become some kind of salt-infused paste that no wolf in their right mind would eat voluntarily. If you don't like how it looks, maybe I can make something else?" I suggested hopefully, praying he'd reject the offer so I could start over. To my surprise, Eric's lips curved into a faint smile. "Your cooking skills," he began, his voice trailing off as he observed my increasingly panicked expression. "Yes, they're not very good," I admitted quickly, desperate to end this humiliation. Eric hadn't eaten breakfast because of his injury, and now I'd ruined lunch too. Could this day get any worse? Third person's POV. The front door opened, and Leo Vance entered the villa, followed by Tristan and Malachi. They had just completed the tasks Eric had assigned them earlier. Leo's eyes immediately landed on the strange substance in the bowl in front of Eric. "Alpha, what are you eating?" Leo asked, squinting at the bowl in confusion. "It doesn't look like something wolves eat." Emma flinched visibly at Leo's blunt assessment. Tristan and Malachi exchanged alarmed glances, silently communicating their disbelief at Leo's lack of tact. If Aiden Walsh was being sent to the Frostfang Wastes as punishment, Leo would fit right in with his complete inability to read the room. Eric's face darkened instantly as he fixed Leo with an icy glare. "Then tell me, what does it look like it's for?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Emma tensed, hunching her shoulders as if trying to disappear. Malachi frantically tried to signal Leo to stop talking, while Tristan discreetly took a step back, recognizing the danger zone that always formed around Leo and his unfiltered mouth. "Well," Leo hesitated, finally sensing the danger. What could he possibly say? The truth was, it looked like something you'd feed to livestock, not respected pack wolves. No self-respecting wolf would cook something that resembled congealed paste. Meanwhile, Emma focused intently on her bowl, taking small bites and trying to become invisible to escape Eric's growing irritation. Leo wisely decided to remain silent, but Eric wasn't about to let him off so easily. "There's more in the pot," Eric stated coldly, his gaze sweeping over Emma's disastrous creation. He'd clearly seen the entire culinary tragedy unfold. "Go eat." Leo's eyes widened in horror. "I'm not hungry," he protested, shaking his head emphatically. Who would willingly eat something that looked so unappetizing? Even the lowest-ranked Omega might turn their nose up at this offering. "Go. Eat," Eric repeated, his tone hardening as his alpha power subtly pressed down on the room. Sensing the imminent danger, Leo didn't dare refuse further. He shot a resentful glare at Emma, cursing her in his mind as he reluctantly walked toward the kitchen. Just as he reached it, Malachi spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "The potential Luna cooked it herself. Eat it properly, no picky eating." The emphasis on those last words carried a clear warning. Eat it, like it or not, or face the consequences. Leo froze, understanding the implicit threat all too well. Meanwhile, Emma hunched even lower over her bowl, forcing herself to continue eating. Hearing Eric's men call her potential Luna while forcing someone to eat her awful cooking made her want to cry from embarrassment. In the kitchen, Leo stared into the pot with undisguised horror. The sticky, unappetizing goo looked even worse up close. What kind of wolf could achieve this level of culinary catastrophe? And how was Emma managing to eat it without showing distress? "I don't have enough. Maybe he shouldn't eat it," Emma called out desperately, making one last attempt to save Leo from her cooking. She knew that once Leo tasted it, the game would be up. Nobody with normal taste buds could eat this without revealing how truly terrible it was. Eric, however, simply pushed his own untouched bowl toward Emma. "Eat this," he instructed, effectively ending her attempt to spare Leo. Leo silently ladled a portion for himself, not daring to join Eric at the table. Instead, he remained standing in the kitchen doorway, bracing himself for what was to come. Taking a deep breath, he scooped up a spoonful and put it in his mouth. The overpowering saltiness hit him instantly, followed by an indescribable odd texture that was simultaneously mushy and undercooked. His expression shifted from discomfort to utter revulsion, his face contorting as he struggled to keep the food in his mouth. "Oof." The sound of him gagging filled the air.